that one, I was like, all right, remember these are supposed to be prioritized meetings. I gave Ricky and Melissa crap, and I'll give the rest of you crap if you don't show up. So just know they are expected that you prioritize them. I know there are things that come up, but in general, you are supposed to be here. Probably just need to reiterate that to people not in the room, so don't worry, I did. But since you are here today, you may think, I could miss next time, especially when we're working on group projects. It just leaves your group in alert when you're not here. So please keep that in mind. I know we haven't talked about that for a little while. Thank you. I need my stuff. I did not think about it today. And we'll keep our normal days, so hopefully it's predictable and all of that. Because I know there's times when we have leadership council, which is like a specialist meeting for coordinators and directors, and you know, like ACL is a project I planned out like 18 months ago. So some things are unavoidable, but if you can, that's awesome. Thank you for being here today and on time. Today's agenda, if you want to look in the Google Drive, I pull it up. We're going to revisit the competency conversation. So we were able to get with special education and CTE in the last couple of weeks and get them to weigh in. So we have about 11 definitions to look at to try and come to one, and then we'll present that one to them to get hopefully the one. Resource vetting. So I had a meeting with board member Earl and Bolter last week, and Jody and Patty, and this has been a long time coming. Resources are things like core guides, guidance documents, courses you might put out that are like USB generated, not curriculum, but supports. The board has always been very interested in trying to vet these. We're trying to avoid the board vetting them in some ways. And so I had to come up with a process that allows a vetting process to occur, but not through the board. So we're going to go through my original brainchild today, and you're going to think, you're the ones who actually get to go through that process. So I want to make sure it's doable, but also allows the board to feel confident that somebody else has seen it. As you know, if you've been in this space at all for the last couple of years, core guides have always been, or what resources are you going to come up with outside your standards documents, has always been a controversy. It comes up every other board meeting in some way, and so it's just time for us to handle it rather than trying to continue to avoid it. So we're going to go through a potential vetting process that will be presented to the board in October. So we're kind of on a fast track. So timely that we have a specialist meeting today because this happened last week late, and we're going to try and develop the process today. So I came up with a draft and we'll kind of play with that. We're going to go through the refined model just real quick that you guys helped give feedback on, and really focus on teacher recruitment around the professional learning standards implementation system today. Start coming up with ideas that we can present to the curriculum directors at the end of the month to see how we might want to recruit teachers. And then action items, we will spend a good deal of time today working on your work group time with your colleagues to help with those standards revision implementation documents. We will also spend a little time, those that have standards, at the end of the session, about probably 15 minutes before the meeting's up. Everyone will get to leave except for those with standards, and we need to fill out the annual rubric. Now, Carl and Sarah, ELA, dual immersion, Robert, you've already done this, so you also may go. So it's just a handful of folks left, but as part of board policy, we now have to submit that rubric annually for all the content areas to show where we are in the rubric, and so we'll do that today so that we can submit that for this year as part of just work time in here. And then the past due reminders, your homework was due on Friday, so these are the ones that I went through my email and tried to update this. If it has an asterisk, there's something that's either being updated or changed, but at least you've turned something in, and if it's not on here, I either think I don't have it and I missed it when you submitted it, or so I'm trying to be positive with putting up the successful ones. But if you don't see your content area on there or your area of expertise, please let me know when I will be harassing you basically to get that in so that we can have it all ready for the curriculum month. And then the staff directory, I did drop in the initial draft of what that looks like. So if your name is not on this list, I need it ASAP. because we're going to submit it to Lee to make it look good. Because if you look at it now, it's not that pretty yet. Your photos are lovely, but the actual layout of it's not the best. So this is what it'll look like. I'm gonna have Karen add emails and phone numbers because I didn't think about that when I had you guys fill it out, but she can add those and then we'll send it on. But the curriculum directors want to know your faces, and this is a really easy way for them to get that. And we can also use it for you all of what does everyone do here? So you'll have the list of what everyone does that we had talked about in our last staff meeting, at least from the specialist point of view. So I'm just showing you everyone so everyone has an very Ricky. I was like, Ricky, that's so you. Appreciate the candor. So just so you can see Melanie's beautiful picture. That's what happens when Barbara gets
That's
you.
a friend of mine right there.
If you don't like your photo, go see Barbara. She'll take a good one of you.
Barbara Fuentes.
The one who helps you with your infographics.
Hi, everybody.
This is fine.
So there you go. If I don't have yours, I need it ASAP, so take a moment now to do that sign-in sheet. Those of you that worked with Ginny Egan, I don't know if you've heard, she fell down the stairs and passed away last week. So Jenny Egan, she worked in our MTSS department a couple of years back and then retired. But yeah, she was just going down to her garage, tripped on the stairs and died. So I'm sure there'll be more information for those of you that know Ginny coming out in the next few days, but that happened, I think, Thursday or Friday. So super disappointing. Ginny was the kindest person I think I've ever met. So, and then we went through homework, did staff. Okay, that is all for the updates. Anything that you need on the agenda that's not currently there? Last week that somebody said there was something not on the agenda and they just brought it up on their own. Is that good for you? Okay. All right, so there is what we've got today. So we're going to start with the educator competency definition and see if our group can come up with a final definition for that. So in the Google Drive, there is a collection of all the definitions from the different groups that is submitted.
Jen, while you're doing that, I do have something to make. At some point, it'd be great to kind of hear what people are thinking regarding the political party affiliation board election implications. So I know, right? So maybe after you guys have talked in leadership or something,
I'm hoping it'll come up at some level. Do you want to give them a little more? When I read the information, I don't know enough about what all those words meant. As you know, social studies is not my strong suit. So, do you want to give them an update on what the judge rolled out?
Well, just that the judge ruled that the board members are not employees of the state, and therefore they do not have to be subject to there's a limitation in the Constitution to a partisan test. And so you can have partisan elections that's the ruling from the Supreme Court, Utah Supreme Court. Yep.
Half the board will turn over. Potentially turn over. So we'll see. Superintendent will talk about it in one of our meetings of what that means for us. It's been a controversial topic for a while now of how our board is elected and all of those things. So. Okay, so it's the compilation of educator competency definitions document. So basically all I did was take the conversations in this one and put them into boxes. So this can actually find definition from each of the departments. So like our team had 4 definitions, five SPED or student group. So it's a SPED and some other random
Support.
yes. Whatever they're calling themselves this week. So their group weighed in, and then CTE as well. So kind of anybody who would have a role in competency was able to have a voice in that. Travis, you ran competency with CTE.
Yes.
Anything to share with the group on your experience with them?
It is very similar to what we did as a group. So I don't think I think their definitions are fairly close, personally. So.
Okay, yeah, and I think special ed honestly had a little more specificity in their language. So I think as you kind of read through these, what I'd like you to do is just give you a moment to kind of read through, see if there's any one or two, like a combination of that kind of really stand out to you. And then we'll work in smaller groups to see if we can get to kind of the key ideas. And if any of these are already pretty workable, that we can just tweak a little bit. I don't want to take too long on this morning, so wordsmithing to a level, but it's going to go to other departments and we can keep fine tuning it a little bit. But are the big ideas represented in that definition? Communicate to the field as well as internally, what do we mean by educator competency? I met with the deans last week, and we're going to be talking more about this with the deans in the future. In my opinion, we can discuss more on your opinions, but the whole point of this should be student learning. Educator competency is only as good as the student. I will try and out the whole intention of it. Competencies that student learning occurs. And a lot of these definitions, because we framed it from educator, but ultimately educator is supposed to influence. Something I'm noticing as I'm reading these. Other noticings as you're kind of going in or hand out to you?
It's like this is one time when a Wordle might actually be helpful.
Would have been helpful. Todd, can you do that again?
Do you want another one?
Yeah.
Sorry, Todd. I've just heard of those things. I don't really know how to make one. But
Let's go to Wordle.com. It's not hard.
Special skills.
Just copy and paste.
I'll do this whole group today without it being super painful. So I'm going to put a time limit on it in my mind. I'm not going to tell you what that time limit is. But in my mind, there's a time limit. And if we get to that time limit, I'm just going to call it and we will move on. I don't want to spend too long wordsmithing or being absolutely perfect, but it does need to be to a level that we can get behind the definition. So does someone want to throw out one that they think might be a good starting place that has a lot of the key elements for us to kind of phrases and words from other definitions as needed?
The very last one talks about, it has the knowledge, skills, dispositions, but then it says apply that knowledge to empower students. So that might be a good one to start to build from.
I was thinking the same one.
This will be really easy. At the bottom, everyone.
And the second from the top is
That's
that
what I was
same
just
knowledge,
gonna
skills,
say.
and
Those
apparently
are-
there's only one disposition necessary.
Just one. I'm going to just combine those for a second so we can kind of see.
It's kind of a run-on sentence, but then so is Chaucer. So
Who's Chaucer? I do declare.
Makes me think of A Knight's Tale. Yeah, I mean, that has the student learning component and the knowledge, skills, and disposition part. Yeah.
I know that Todd is creating a lovely Wordle, but words that seem to be important to me are content and pedagogy and the knowledge, skills, disposition. And about student learning.
I add to Jolie's list and say measurable mastery and application.
do like the word creative. I don't know, I mean, I just feel like
Creative
it's so
ways.
easy to drum creativity out of education, so.
When it ties nicely with Portrait of a Graduate, that it's about building different skills beyond words that you're like, that definition.
I think if it can turn into this, it's not that I necessarily love the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one down, but where it's like there's this short description and then has like the bullets,
I
because
agree.
then I think it can capture those things. And so when we add creative, I'm almost like, do we want to just put in the 4 C's? So we talk about creativity, critical thinking, collaboration.
Call out portrait of a graduate in this, or do we?
I don't think so. I just think there's some nice, like, all of those, all the C's are in Portrait of a Graduate. I think it just makes some nice tie-in points that we're not, if that's what we want students to be able to do, teachers need to engage them in ways that allow them to do those skills.
Or can you remind me or us, with the audience of this, who's going to be reading this, or where's it going to live?
A lot of it's for agency. But as we start to move towards changing endorsements, as well as we continue in the preparation space, our mentoring modules, special ed's endorsements, because they're going to try and update theirs. So it's a lot of how we'll articulate how to develop a competency. So how you might see it is like in the ed tech endorsement. As if we start to transform into competency-based, it won't say take these 6 courses. It's going to say you need to have these 20 knowledge, skills, and dispositions related to that kind of area of expertise. And so the definition, if you're trying to say, well, you need this knowledge to be ed tech endorsed, we want to make sure that the definition allows for us to.
Creation of competencies, this answers the question, well, what is a competency?
Educator
To then
competency.
be able to develop competencies.
Yeah, so when you're saying, when a teacher says, well, why are you holding me for that? Because our competency says you have to apply knowledge and skills, right? Like, it's insufficient in my mind to just have knowledge, it's the application of that knowledge. So as we've been working on the micro-credential stuff, and as we get further down that line, I'll come and have the group advisory council, and some of you are on that, trying to define what's a non-negotiable when you're submitting a micro-credential course. Our whole thing is you have to be able to apply it, and student learning has to be demonstrated. So in the past, you could create a Nearpod experience, but it was just about the creation of the Nearpod, not the interaction with students and their learning that came from that. And we're no longer going to allow like a micro-credential just to be about the tool you created, but that tool influenced student learning. And so this will help us to be able to say, here's why those micro-credentials are at least justified at some level, as to why it's insufficient just to create something, but to create for the impact of student achievement or outcomes. Given knowledge is insufficient, you have to our endorsements at this point, the data for reading, I think ESL is showing the same thing, insufficient. So this is kind of giving us this common language in the agency around what do we actually mean when we talk competency, so that when CTE is out saying things or special education, some of our teachers serve in multiple capacities, that they're not hearing different ways of how we define a competency. So it's really approach more than what the field probably will deal with. We might use it in the micro-credential space to try and help with the definition that we have for a micro-credential. Because we started to define what is a micro-credential, but this might help even in that. Does that help? Did you send that to me?
I did.
But Jennifer, is there,
It's not great. Nothing that,
Demonstrate. We didn't have that one.
I guess the question for me is about is it a given that, I mean, I do feel like, we have courses that we require for high school graduation. You have college courses that you take to get a minor or a major and higher.
So that's changing. So We have an internal team that's just started that will be moving away from certain courses for graduation to a competency-based model as well. So it's no longer going to be 4 ELA classes, long-term most likely. But what are the knowledge, skills, and disciplines you have to demonstrate through a portfolio or through assessments or whatever? So although currently we're in the space of courses, that's not long-term.
Yeah, but see, that's a
Right.
huge, that's, I mean, that's a huge shift for me. I mean, when you think about, we have US history, world history, world geography, US government and citizenship. For some of those students, that's the only time in their lives they will ever take a course on world history, for example. And we're going to trade that out for,
Not necessarily, so it's
right?
how,
So I
how
mean,
do
that's
we-
the conversation,
Oh, yeah.
because if we're going to say, because there's some states that just say you need 4 units of social studies, and you need 4 units of ELA, and you need 4 units of this, but there's no course named.
Yeah.
We're different. We say you need this, 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 and this.
And at some point, as content people, those of you that have actual content areas, you will be constructing competencies for your area. So you still find value in them knowing certain things about US, world, and civilizations or geography. Competencies will want to represent that, and that can then be taught in a similar way, but it may not be necessarily true. That's it's still so new, like I said, the first meeting with mind blowing. Not something I have been prepared for from a background. Portrait or graduate will ultimately be elements that we use for the competencies, and one of them is academic knowledge, right? But there are 12 others that have nothing. Service and perseverance. We're at an exciting time in education. It's also scary because there's so much unknown. I don't know about you all. I don't feel super comfortable in the space of developing. Spent a lot of time in the student space, and so defining what that looks like in a pre-K-12 continuum, not only in high school, but it's then, well, if that's what has to be done in high school, what happens by then in middle school? What happens?
States that you feel are, I mean, are probably ahead of us, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it well. Do you know of any states that are doing it
Shared
well?
like 8 of them, and I haven't looked them over yet, that have competencies at the state level that we're going to use to figure out what does Utah's competencies look like. So that conversation is coming. It's just barely started. We meet with Leadership Sync starting this month, I think, to start having an hour-long conversation every couple of. It's going to take a little while before it gets to us, I think, but it is coming. So it's you get news articles, or you want to start Googling. I can even share the 8 that she shared if you're interested, and what other states are doing, because that's going to eventually inform how Utah kind of gets. The competency conversation, although it might seem premature where we are, it's going to come, and it's rolling really quickly. Our board document says we'll have competencies by spring of 2020.
Prototypes.
That's huge in my mind. So
Educator competencies.
no, student.
That's one thing. Just one point of clarification. I think we all are on the same page. This conversation is specific to educator competencies, and then we shifted to student competencies, which is another conversation. Granted, they're very connected, but they're different.
Yeah.
What does a student need to know? This conversation is around teachers and what do they, all of these words related to educating.
Do the work of how you help educators and how you help kids. I'm hoping we can get a definition that's supposed to and use what we know about somewhat consistent, just a few in a leadership role.
All right, so if we look at our Wordle, I think Jolie, you did a great job pulling out what we expected. We have a lot of that here within this content knowledge. I don't think we have demonstrate as kind of a big one. That's what we're gonna pull out to make sure we
So there's Wordle, isn't there just an app called Definition? You can just throw the words back in.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Now create a paragraph.
I'll leave
Right.
that to you as
Well,
well.
I think if we even look at this definition that we pulled out, knowledge, probably need to find. That knowledge, skills, and dispositions kind of.
Will you add an S, just please?
Yep,
Thank you.
I
I mean, I can do it,
Which one do we
but.
want?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I pose a question about that word.
Yeah,
I think I mentioned this before, in conversations around student competencies, oftentimes people will suggest not using the word dispositions because it's not well understood. So I'm not suggesting we shouldn't use it, but just
at
for
some point we might need to define what a disposition.
defining what it is or using a word that's more commonly
So,
understood
for
and used.
example, they're building a micro-credential on social emotional learning, element of social emotional, but it requires the educator to demonstrate social emotional health. And then what does that look like for students as part of the micro-credential? It's very interesting, but that's more of a disposition area than probably like a Nearpod or something. It's been interesting to kind of organic flow of the micro-credential space.
Space of educator preparation, there is a lot of research the last 5 years about educator disposition. I think with regard to educators, I think a lot more defined than student dispositions, right?
Perseverance might be something a teacher needs to have. And flexibility. Things like that.
I'm just also wondering about
So maybe.
I don't know.
To the chairs.
Right. My disposition would be a lot better if I could instruct a class.
How to prepare itself, right?
Yeah.
Teaching, put its own bulletin boards up.
So Todd, out of curiosity, what terms?
So, qualities, traits, words that are more commonly used. It's kind of a hot word, right? Dispositions is being used everywhere, and so I think it's becoming more and more understood and commonly used. It was in a conversation with a national expert in competency that says when you're talking to communities, when you use that word, you only reach a certain population, and it goes over other people's heads. So if you can use words that all people understand, it's gonna resonate with more people. That's not to say it's not the right word, though. It was just
I'm making sure I'm going back to our audience is educators, right?
right, which is what I was wondering before. Who are we talking to? And I think that changes how we frame it.
And then I'm also like a little bit more in the weeds on this, but our audience is that, but then the other part is this also something that is an elevator speech for us? Like, are we trying to come up with a definition that we would all be able to rattle off? Or is this something that is to help guide a decision-making document that it's not about us being able to rattle off?
Okay. This is more. At some point, you're all going to have to develop competencies, and we need vision that your competencies are similar in a lot of ways to someone else's competencies, right? The content's going to be different, but the approach to how we define and write competencies needs to be very similar. And you can't really start down that path until we agree to what are competencies as a general.
So can we have a quick chat about manage then?
Yeah, I don't love it.
Love it. I mean, we don't have inspire or engage. I mean, we do have
Empower
engage,
and
but
one
I mean,
above.
but the idea of, like, are we competently managing children? I mean, I get classroom management's a critical piece, so I'm just kind of curious about whether does manage seem to me it seems kind of limiting in terms of the, because competency, even though competency by its very nature is kind of a low bar, you know what I mean? In terms of when we think about the word, well, he's competent. But that's not really what we mean when we talk about competency. So then manage seems also like a low bar, that's all.
There are a lot of tasks that teachers have to do every day, like take roll, fill out SLOs, things like that,
Right.
that aren't connected with learning, but they are connected with keeping large amounts of children free from harm.
Right. And you're saying that, so then you feel like manage should be there or something akin to that?
I think that's a big part of teachers' jobs.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Some of that might be how we define skills. In terms of like, when you go back and look at the graduate, communication, important for us to foster in our teachers. Where would they fit in this definition? Aren't exactly pedagogical skills, or more like adaptive skills.
That's a good point. I think it goes to the place too of if our purpose is identify overarching competencies, it feels maybe to me more like those C's may belong in another area that is expanding upon what we're talking about here, as opposed to it being a major. To me, it feels like anything that's in this that we're creating, Jennifer, it feels like anything that's in here really needs to be major and overarching.
Not that it's not important, like any of these elements are essential, but which ones are really like levers, I guess. And so this could be a paragraph. We're not going to make it a paragraph. The goal is a distinct definition that encompasses everything at a high level without getting lost in the so where one skill is critical, we might want to keep that. Where another skill, yes, you need it to be able to be a good teacher, but is it encompassed in something else? So is it that if I'm able to affect student learning in positive ways, I probably have classroom management skills. Maybe not, but generally, if you're going to have positive outcomes for learning, you have learned how to.
Right. I mean, if you took out manage, I mean, if it's just dispositions to effectively engage and instruct diverse learners, the assumption is that
To me, it's embedded.
It's embedded, right? And
You're
just like
engaging students to engage students.
Help me work through this. Are you starting your definition with an educator or
Not
with
necessarily,
the
I was just
above?
trying to make a sentence. So,
Because I feel like we're kind of,
No.
are we including that top part?
No,
We're not including the top part.
no.
I think the top part is speaking more to a competency, and this second definition is talking about like the outcome of a like effective educator who is working through this competency space. Because when you're saying a competency is an educator demonstrates, like that doesn't make sense, right? What does a competency do? It allows an educator to demonstrate, or I feel like we're losing the definition, and we're talking about the outcome of a competency based. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just wordsmithing as you guys talk.
Creativity.
The sentence makes sense, honestly. I've just added words, so.
Are we going to allow this to like live 100%, like this is our thing? Or are we going to create a document that says, okay, well, what does competency around content knowledge look like? What does competency around pedagogical knowledge and skills look like? Because I feel like like, this is a really good, like, snippet, but then, like,
Very high level, right?
right, and what does effectively engaging actually look like in the classroom, right? So I just kind of wonder.
Yeah, I don't know how grain size we want to go with this group, but it's open for discussion. Because in your content areas, it's going to look different. And that's where you get to define what are the content skills, what are the pedagogical skills, what's the disposition that teachers need to demonstrate to show effective student learning. To me, that part almost gets defined by your content. General definitions
Because like I would say like the management stuff, like some of the stuff is over everything, right? Like regardless of what you're teaching, you have to be able to engage students, right? But the content knowledge is very different depending on what your content. And the pedagogical skills, also different, right? But I feel like there's a lot of that is
general teaching. And we get into this in the educator preparation space. So there's certain literacy skills if I'm an elementary teacher I need to have, or mathematics skills. But there's just general teaching practices I need across the school day too, and so there's kind of different levels of Robert, and then Sarah, and then I think Tom.
I'm just curious about where this ties back to the educator leadership or educator standards, the professional learning standards for educators. It seems like to then drill down to what is that effective effective instruction looks like. Doesn't tie back to that document, then why do we do that document,
From reading those and being somewhat knowledgeable. You had a little too much.
Like Malia was saying, the expanded version will include that last part about creativity, critical thinking. How it would look if we ended at learning, or even just said ability to advance student learning to mastery. That's the ultimate goal.
Oh, I was just going to call out, I appreciate the comment around grain size, and I think that's always where competency conversations end up going, is like, what's the grain size we're talking about? And I've heard Travis say this, as well as a number of others, that we just have to determine where are we, what level are we talking from? And I think this is the highest level.
Absolutely.
And then there'll be smaller competency grain sizes as like the conversation continues.
Yeah. I think some of it just needs to happen organically. Like when we need to confront that, we can. As it is at this point. How do we feel about where we are? And then Jody.
Competencies. Competencies allow. I don't know. There. Lots of things we're talking about. Are we grouping it all under one competency as all of these things, or is it, I don't know, just a thought.
Wow.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So
Welcome to
is the
conversation.
whole purpose of this document for like teacher evaluation, or for a teacher to look at it and think?
No, like teachers may never even see this definition. Because our special educator colleagues are in this space. Understand when we're going to define competencies for driver ed. But these are what we mean, and that's going to be the driving kind of anchor for the competencies you might develop in your content area. Does that help?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm in deja vu that I just did.
Welcome. Jody?
So nitpicky. We have demonstrate and demonstrating in the same sentence.
Okay. Suggestion? I'm sure we have somebody.
And I know it doesn't, I mean, it really doesn't matter, but I It just seems like there's so many words. Do we need the same one twice?
I was having
many
this.
words. I don't care which one changes, but I agree. I try not, especially in a shortish sentence.
Yeah.
So
If
we're looking at the actual
advance,
competency,
yeah.
Through advancing student learning.
It's shorter too.
Thanks.
good catch, Jody.
That's all the time we have
Really
for today.
silly
So
thing,
this is
but-
gonna be it for now. I will send it out for more suggestions, but just know I didn't want to spend too long on it.
Yes, but you have a
So
different.
at this point, that's where we landed. Yay, we're moving on. Shonda, feel free to send that in an email. Just because I feel like we have to keep pace, because I want to make sure I give you enough team time today, unlike last meeting. So, next steps for that process,
So add
we'll
the
special
suggestion
ed
on
and
the
CTE,
document.
I'm going to pull a group of them together, probably with a couple of
Or add a
you,
comment on the side.
to look at that definition and wordsmith in a painful way to the final definition that will come back. Okay? It's really hard to do that at this many. All right, the next part is for those of you that came in late, just context. Board members are having disputes over what needs to come to them for review and what is staff guidance, right? So what you
my devil horns today. Dang it.
Oh, you Maleficent. And so this started through the conversation with the frequently asked questions sex education document. So if you haven't had a chance to read about oral anal sex, feel free to. This has been Jody's life for the last week or two.
Since you're all adults, I don't need parental consent first.
So that was just the most recent example. This has come up anytime people have done core guides, anytime we put out any guidance on any rule, anytime you're building anything. This is not a new concept. It's just bubbled up again because of this FAQ and Gail Rosica's rise to the board meeting. But Laura Belknap brings it up in every other board meeting, like what about core guides? Shouldn't those come to the board? In a way to kind of mitigate what comes to the board, given we've created a lot of resources in this office and cannot bring everything to them in a way that would get us efficiently producing resources and supports our liaisons. I came up with a vetting process that takes the board out of the vetting process, but still allows for some kind of controls. So in your documents for today, you'll see something that has a lot of blue. If you want to pull that one up so you can actually read this. It came up with this in a 30-minute time cycle. So feel free to analyze. You are ultimately, I create very little as the director, right? I'm not going to have to go through this process very often. You ultimately will be the ones who actually do it. So I wanted to bring it to you to say, does this make sense? We need enough controls that the board feels like they don't need to get engaged, but we also need to be able to produce resources in an efficient manner. So I'm going to talk you through my thoughts so that you can kind of see how to read the document, because it's not all in it. Obviously, I leave some ideas out. But a resource, you can see I tried to define what it is in the italics at the top. Any materials created or shared to support standards implementation and code or policy related guidance such as core guides, web links, or guidance documents. So even the web links on our web page are taking heed. So if we're sending people to one type of opinion, we probably need to have a counter opinion, or at least both sides of the story. So for abstinence only versus
Abstinence-based.
Abstinence-based, that we need to represent our both perspectives. And so as we kind of look at what you have on the website, even is coming under attack, and I'm like, we just can't bring the board everything you produce, right? And so this is my way of trying to make them feel confident that staff has a process for vetting that allows other stakeholders to make sure that the content seems appropriate. And then when there is a concern brought, that we have a method for addressing that concern. So step one, this is how you kind of create a resource, right? So LEA requests received from multiple teaching charters, or staff identifies an area of need. So for example, both Jody and Ricky have been working on core guides for their content area, standards implementation. That was something they identified as a need, as well as the curriculum director said, please, right? So we had it kind of coming both of those. Those are my two ways that I generally have seen this happen, but if there's another strategy that you want incorporated, keep that in mind. Next, you develop the resource. Multiple stakeholders are coming together to work on that. It might just be you and another colleague. It may just be you, but in general, we have multiple stakeholders coming to kind of work through something, or you send it out to a few of them for feedback before you release it at a broader level. So that development team review the content according to the review criteria and refine as necessary. So at the bottom, these would be the criteria that really came out of the conversation with the board. Sid came in at one point and kind of weighed in as well. So alignment to current law or policy. So does the current document align with whatever policy would allow for? So in sex ed, there's certain things you can't talk about or certain ways you have to handle certain questions. Review criteria 2, alignment to standards or code or rules. So it aligns appropriately to those. Alignment to relevant research or evidence base, that it's not some crazy document, but there is some, we talked about how you can find research for anything, but what is the body of research, not just the one that you found that is contrary to every other opinion. Accuracy of information, so in sex ed's case, it's like medically accurate, but in your cases, it's just, is the information you're putting out, is the website that you're sending people to accurate? Developmentally appropriate, so considering your space, if you're gonna send them to a site, that is the content developmentally appropriate for the age you might be putting in the core sections too. And the last one, access to resources do not require, should not be due, require sharing personal information. So they didn't want them to have to log into a site to be able to get access to it. So if it's a site that you're like, yeah, it's great, but it's gonna require personal information to be shared, it shouldn't be on the website, it shouldn't be in your core guides. That would be something that the board did not feel comfortable, nor Sid, in encouraging people to go to sites that they have to give personal. So those are the review criteria. So when you've created a document, let's say you made a core guide with your team, you think it's done, that team would then, maybe they didn't create every section, so maybe Jamie made section, Jessica made the literacy section, and a different team made the social emotional section. You guys might switch sections and use this review criteria to make sure that nothing is out of line according to those review criteria. That would be the initial. So it's just the people making the document would do the initial vetting to make sure it meets those review criteria. Secondary vetting is basically release the resource to the LEAs, and the LEAs have the opportunity to say, hey, we don't like this, or did you know it has this? And you're like, oh, crap, didn't. We'll go ahead and edit that, right? And so that's the secondary vetting. It's just allowing us to develop changes based on feedback from the field. And then the last one is if a concern is received, it was decided in this meeting that it would go to Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman, and she would then filter that request to whichever staff member it goes to, kind of like internal audit. They'll get a complaint, and then it gets filtered to the appropriate staff person who responds, and we would document it, obviously. But we would take that concern to this critical review committee, and you would create this critical review committee for your own content area or realm of influence. So Jolie might say, okay, we're gonna have like a team of 5, and that team of 5 needs to be a broad perspectives group. So people that have differing opinions, but can come together around an issue and represent a diverse perspective, so that when they're looking at it, so it might be someone from the Access Committee, might be someone with maybe a pedagogical view that's a little bit different than what typically would be hoping for in mathematics, but not someone so far off the end that it's that person we always called out at like standards meeting that you're like, oh, he's here again, that kind of thing. Like, you don't need to go that far extreme, but enough difference of perspective that it's not just, yep, looks good, and we're stamp of approval every single time, but there would be some discussion. And then the recommendation and staff response would be submitted so that the issue of the concern kind of process with this critical review determine who your committee is, that you have that selected in case something comes up, so you know who your crew is to have them address whatever comes. So that is the process that I've tried to come up with to avoid every document you make going to the State Board of Education. So questions about the general concept or process?
I'm curious, as you know, in step 1, it's received multiple, right? Mm-hmm. So like there are multiple people saying, but yet it's just one concern that can throw it into a tizzy.
Yeah,
It
but
seems
we kind
like
of
it should be multiple.
So Gail Rosica was enough to throw a tizzy, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a big tizzy. It doesn't need to get in the newspaper and on the news and a board presentation. But if someone raises it, like internal audit, they don't wait for 6 concerns. One comes before it's supposed to respond, right? It's not like it's a huge, it's like, okay, we had this complaint. As staff, you might be like, okay, delete. And it's not a big deal, but if you feel like, oh, I want people to weigh in, that critical review committee would definitely be, they want someone outside of staff to be vetting if it gets to a point of.
I do not want to add a thing.
She loves
Anything she
this
says
conversation.
can and
Will be used against her.
Plead the fifth.
Tara? Okay. Thoughts on the process? Like, you have to do this, not me. So that's why I'm bringing it to you, because ultimately it's on you. I will be the one that makes sure you're doing it. If there's a concern raised from a board member, like, hey, we have a concern for this, like, Jody's gonna have to do this with someone. So think of that. This is you. And all of you at some
There's
point.
never not going to be a concern.
No.
We could take sex completely out of health and it would make the news. It would be on every news channel. People would be picketing our office because how dare we not teach it?
It's
There is
definitely a
no
mixed
way. There is zero ability for me to win on this one.
Tell us how you feel.
Exactly how I feel.
In reviewing instructional materials, we always consider accessibility, meaning that it's available to all students and it doesn't treat any group unfairly. You know, we have to worry about bias and things. So I'm wondering if that should be included in the review criteria. Want to stay away from commercial interests or favoring any one particular group or political stands and those kinds of things.
Send me some language. I'm gonna just put unbiased perspective for now. Send me some language, maybe.
Or in code, it was called medically accurate, unbiased, and factual.
We might need both.
There's a grammatical issue in 5. If you just scroll up to the
Oh, I
step.
was like, that 5 looks okay.
The primary point of contact, it will be right to the primary point of contact, which will be deputy superintendent, or who will be, or whatever, I don't,
Yeah, who will be?
I think it's who, right?
Yeah, who?
Or is there guidance on how long, like timelines about how long it's out for secondary vetting to establish that?
It's basically once it gets released that if like a comment comes from the LEAs, we take consideration of that comment. But it's not meant to be like a 30-day review. We could put a window on it and say they have 60 days to give us feedback for additional refinement before it becomes a final draft. Or final. Put it out and say you have 60 days to give me or 30 to give feedback if you feel like something is outside of what you'd want, and then we make the document updated and that becomes the final version. That might be useful to have.
That'd be helpful as far as navigating the board if they were to see a resource and they want, saying this was out to, we got feedback for 30 days. Would that be helpful?
Review period. It might, and well, that way you can say, well, it's been out for the 30 days and we haven't had any, disagreement. Field knows they have a restricted window, they'd be more likely to get to that document than if it's like, well, at some point tell us. Not saying we wouldn't be responsive to their concern at any point in time, but the major vetting of the tool or whatever you've released, it would be at a certain time. But seems like a reasonable time period if we added something to 4.
3 to 4 weeks.
30?
I will share this, and when the math core guides, and maybe it's because we're talking about core guides that I'm thinking about this, when they first went out, they actually had a draft watermark across the front of it for a long time. Like it actually was printed and put into the core standards for 3 years with the draft watermark on it. So that when people would call and say, I think blah, 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 it's like, thank you so much for that feedback. And I mean, I know we live in a much more electronic, what is my problem? Thank you.
It's Monday morning. That's all.
Yeah, but I don't know that having it longer than 30 days wouldn't also be, I think it depends on the document. So
Well,
maybe
it's not
for-
that you couldn't update it, like if someone found a grammatical error or something, but it gives the LEAs an expectation of if you have any major concerns, that comes in the next 30 days. You can give us feedback at any time, but
Yeah.
anything significant before we finalize. Does that sound reasonable? Because I agree with you, like, most of our documents still stay draft.
Yeah.
Okay, so any major concerns about this process? And if you can come up with a better one, I'm open to it. I just have to come up with something fast because board backup is due. So, and I wanted to get something to you all for feedback rather than you being impacted without the opportunity to be involved in what the process is going to look like. And that meant today, because if I go to board meeting, it's October, so.
One question just in regards, is there a timing or general guideline of when not be addressed today, but there's not to overbind us, but just to communicate, taking your concerns seriously.
Yeah.
This
and
will go through a process.
Audit requires 7-day return. A month is probably too long for us to respond. So what do you think is reasonable given you could be out of the office at a conference for a week? What's reasonable within your current workload if there was a complaint that came in and you need that reasonable to the group? Additional timelines will be the board will appreciate because they'll
For step 5, maybe it should say and addressed.
up here.
Yeah.
In the heading?
Like in
subheading?
the blue part.
Like that's not making sense to me. Give me more.
Because it doesn't close the loop just to receive.
Nice. Other thoughts or feedback? And I really hope you see, like, whenever I think stuff's going to affect you, my goal is to bring it to you for feedback. Because I don't want you to have it done to you. Like, this is being done to you in some ways, but at least there's some input in the process. Because we ultimately get to define what that process is. This was just my initial sitting in that meeting going, how do I now make everything go to the board? This is my way of doing that. Already have really long meetings. They really don't have time to review everything we put on the website or any document you've ever made. So, okay, I'm gonna leave it there. If you sit and think more about this and have additional thoughts or feedback, feel free to drop by or email me. This will go to the board for a board meeting in October, so there's a little document. The superintendency's already weighed in. They felt pretty good about it. They gave me some grammatical stuff to change, but I will send it to Earl and Bolter later today, as they were the two board members. But there's difference of opinion across board members around what should the vetting process be. Like, we hire high quality staff. Why would we make everything come to the board? And then there's people that think everything should go through the board. So this is trying to mitigate the two ends of the spectrum and come to we'll have others vetting, and if something does come of concern, we have a process for that. And it's not saying we weren't doing this in the past, we just didn't have a defined process. Many of you were responding to concerns as they come in. This gives us, like, we do have a process and makes it seem like it's a. All right, thank you for your time on that. That was pretty fast. Well done, everyone. That was 10 minutes.
Do what Julie does.
It's a 3.
Pretty close. All right, so
Let's see if the board can beat us.
Oh, you're funny.
That was pretty funny.
You're funny. All right, so next thing, given some feedback on this document that you guys helped with last time. There was still one thing that I think is missing, but I'll get that added. And where did it go? The professional implementation system that we wordsmithed a little last time, but just looked at the general concept. This has been really well received Everyone's seen it. Sid is super excited about us actually having a system. I think she saw it a couple days before board meeting and came up and was just super excited about it. So I think they're gonna give us the money we need to be able to do this work moving forward. I made a lot of the changes that you all asked for in terms of language changes, wording, those kinds of things. I think the only thing missing that I think Kathy had brought up was integration. So I had put it in the document for Barbara to add, but it's not there. So I think that's the only thing missing. Patty's feedback was to get the strategic plan alignment on there, so it ties in really well from a funding mechanism more than anything. But it'll be nice for our curriculum directors to start see us tying our work to that strategic. That's on the side there, and then does it have all four? No, because it doesn't really fit in health and safety directly. I couldn't find a good connection unless somebody else could, but they were okay that it wasn't all four. All
right.
And maybe it fits that.
I'm just looking at Jody.
What do you think?
I'm left off. It's cool.
You're left off.
Safe and healthy.
You're still 2B, everyone. Everyone in this room is 2B and 4B and 1A. So
That is the question.
Be or not.
okay, so that is where we landed there. What I wanted to talk about today, and I'm gonna have you work like in little clusters to kind of allow multiple ideas to come to the front in a more collegial way around recruitment. So we're gonna be on a fast timeline this year, faster than we'll hopefully be in future years, to recruit teachers to help be designers and facilitators for the Summer Institute. And so as we think about how do we get the LEAs to support us in that recruitment, I wanted to have you guys generate how might we go about recruiting educators from the field that one can help us, build capacity, two, build their capacity so they can influence their local level of their capacity, but also make sure we get a high quality educator in this space that one will be great for us and represent the state well, but two is someone the LEA would actually use in their own practice. Sometimes we hire people that the LEA would be like, I would never have them get professional learning in our LEA. And to me, that's to build them up to then not be able to serve in their local LEA seems a poor tie in collaboration with the LEA. So what I'd like to have you kind of talk about in groups of 4 or 5, so just kind of cluster around each other, is what might be some successful recruitment techniques, and then considering how do we engage the LEAs in helping us with that. So the curriculum directors are coming in a couple of weeks, and I ultimately want to say, here's how we would like to go about this, and here's how we're going to need your help to do that. But I need to know how you want recruitment to go, or what are some different strategies we can take to consider recruitment. So I talked with Max Lang, who used to run, Max Longhurst, who used to run Core Academy in the early days of Core, and how they used to do it is kind of asking district leaders who they might recommend, and then they would call the school principal of those teachers and talk to the principal. And if the principal kind of had a good story, then they generally would talk to the teacher, or they would actually go in and watch teachers teach and vet them that way. Given our resources and that we have like one person per content area, that seems really daunting to me to have to go in and watch people teach. Ultimately, would that be the best? Hell yes. I just don't know, given your other demands, if that's a possibility. And so I just wanted to give you how they used to do it, just to kind of give you one idea of maybe there's ways to modify that. But they honestly kind of went through this kind of, you tell us who, and we'll do some vetting with that kind of group. But maybe there's a different way or a better way that you guys can think of that we can then partner with the LEAs in getting us the right. Because this is a lot of content areas. Many of these teachers have never been asked to give professional learning in their content area. So thinking about that and leveraging that we want to build people, so when we decide to no longer work here, there is someone ready to take your job, right? Ultimately, we need to be able to replace ourselves. And if we don't give people the opportunity to do this work, it's very hard to replace ourselves. And so this is a great way for you to get to know people in the field, to have resources, but to ultimately continue the our jobs open, we have 20 people to go and say, hey, this job's opening, please apply. Sarah, especially as finances get better someday. And you're not saying, come join us for a pay cut.
To work year round.
Yeah.
So I noticed you were saying teachers. does that mean coaches won't be allowed?
Coaches definitely could be.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, I would
Good
hope
question.
principals would too, if they have something great that they could share. Okay,
Yeah, so
I just wanted to make sure it
educators in
wasn't
general,
just.
and I think I probably did narrow it to teachers, but you're welcome to like educators in general. You might even think professional organizations that can help you be presenters. But from an LEA perspective, how might we recruit the people to design and facilitate? And I'll leave it at people to be a little more open. All right, so let's divide for about 5 minutes, generate some potential ideas, and then we'll share those out. Pick a stakeholder, not stakeholder, a spokesperson, and if that's a fickle finger exercise where whoever doesn't point at their nose first, that's fine. I'm giving you a strategy if you need one. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes to discuss what are some potential strategies for recruitment. You know,
Minus one team.
Look at this right now, but just so I don't forget. The gray box at the bottom left for the costs.
Imagine like texting all my preschool LEA directors that I work with a lot and see. Yeah, I'll be this week. Let's go.
Just right
So what do they choose? Like, that's why we call it
So team, curriculum team.
And the way that people get picked on there is.
I don't have, never mind.
Rebellion, so
Okay, great, Travis is speaking.
Sorry.
I'd love to see someone who's.
We're just getting through
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No. That's like, so last
We're
slide.
talking about the summer deal, recruitment, right?
I assumed we were talking about.
You have to wait till now. It's not, you have to have a public. I need to find someone to teach digital. I think that to have us being going to class.
Well, I guess part of my thing is
She didn't mention like it started with health in particular. I really appreciate our community partners.
So say for instance,
They have been fabulous.
I can help.
I've been creative with my own conference each year, but pulling that back and bring them apart into 6 or 7 regions. Someone like them has been so fabulous. That's something that's taught.
Leave your book and find a
Thank you so much.
Then also serve who is implementing children's who has great stuff, different select health groups, lessons as well. Art by University has been awesome, like the nutrition. That's my Cancer Institute. They've been great because they have free. Well, they'll come in and teach about sun protection or teach about nutrition.
there's also an
That's been really great too. And then it's
So I actually did have a facilitator last year. Moved here
but it's
from
been a
South
really
Carolina.
great tool.
So she hadn't attended
that
professional
ties to
learning in the
standards.
state, but when she completed her application, it was
In addition to teachers, of course, but that's, I'm thinking away from.
Because we sent out information and encourage people, we sent it out to my math community listserv, we sent it out to and then we also did the math community listserv, also asked them to then disseminate it to all teachers. And so some people are better at that than others.
And then the other thing is that gives you
Teacher winners, or, I mean, there's gotta be a list of teachers who have been already vetted by
All these getting the same thing, something you have that you
I'm not saying about we don't recruit at all, I'm just saying that I think that the bigger thing is what are we always doing? What are we always doing or to build a state of leaders in the state.
Well, and the facilitators
Going on to do that.
that,
We're dominating a lot of conversation. Facilitators in our group.
There are times when I have a difficult time finding teachers to come in and review instructional materials. Sometimes it's days to review.
Nobody knows about it.
But there's not a lot of incentive. Some states pay for people to come in and review. We don't pay them.
Because they're, or
We give them
principal doesn't
free
want that
books
person.
if there are any.
So they're like, no, I
But
don't
there's
care.
minimum
It's like,
individuals. But the
a
incentive is to
lot
get
of-
these people
a
here.
lot of,
Sort of like.
No, I think this is gonna take a lot of that
Well,
out
and I think just that with materials review as well, it's like also making sure that they're like
So the out of the classroom part
qualified.
goes.
Yes. And what are the indicators of someone being qualified? I will tell you that in
I would love
math,
to be able to go out into more classrooms and actually watch teachers.
rely on
Be able, you know,
my content specialists.
We've solved the world's problems. I'll be San County on Wednesday.
The standards, and when they have their district meetings or PLC meetings,
Just explaining.
that you know that it's, it's not just that you're a good teacher, but you actually are familiar with the standards, so that you come to district and review.
30 seconds.
I don't always
Do you feel like
hard to get into the
there's
classroom.
a teacher out there who maybe is very highly qualified,
For
but doesn't know the
So I can add to the
communication
newsletter, it's
routes,
my
so he
favorite day of
doesn't
the
get,
month.
And so you
he
get
doesn't ever get the opportunity to do that.
Let's hope so.
Sometimes teachers are really are which is amazing.
A lot of experts like to use, but I think it goes back to that conversation of like, so how do you more encourage people to be in the communication loops?
Yeah.
So at some point we need to be. I am the new David.
So I can like piggyback it with the different.
Yeah, I mean, so we have a math and we have one specialist. But I'm like,
I can,
One?
I got it.
They're fighting over middle finger over there. All right, we have groups wanting to volunteer to go first. Your hand shot up first. Sarah, thank you.
So we were talking about that, the classroom visits are really important too, but like, so maybe do some of those if we can. But, contacting like the district, leadership and seeing who they would recommend, but also, Lisa was saying that, a lot of times that the classroom teachers know who is highly qualified, but that doesn't get, communicated up the channels. So if we created like a Google Doc or Google survey at some point, so we could send it out to LEAs and say, who would you recommend, but also please send this out to your staff, and so then we could gather and then compare the two. That way you're getting it from the leadership, but also from the people that are actually in the field and who they have worked with and value.
And some of the thinking, if I can add on, it's just me processing to make something like this work in a really good way. Teachers that can influence teachers, but you also need people who have district leadership support and open the way for them. That combination could be awesome.
And I think to add on to that, the way we kind of worked around, yes, it would be, we don't have time to do like 1,000 observations. It seems a little tricky. These are who we recommend. We decided it would need to be a common message coming from all the content areas of here's the purpose of why we're engaging, which this could even go out through CDs, I suppose. It was one solid message. And it would be, you know, this is the purpose, this is who we're looking for, who would best represent your LEA, and then the recommendations need to be recommended by multiple people in their LEA. So that could be teachers, it could be principals, coaches, it could be district leaders. But that way we're getting at, there are multiple people in this LEA saying this person's amazing, not just their best friend.
Yeah.
Or not just, I'm scared of that teacher, so I'm gonna pick her because she might kill me later. Crazy. You know, so it's really, it's getting at who do a lot of people think this person's gonna be really great. That was kind of a way to have the burden put back on them as to who do you feel good about, and if they know the purpose of this person will also be someone who's going to be kind of in a leadership role, and you know, who do you want to build up, and who do you think would be best represent your LEA and the state?
Maybe if we get multiple names and they didn't match the district, we could bring it back to the district and say, here's who we're thinking. hiring. And make sure they take one last vetting look. Might know things that classroom teachers don't know about why they would be like, oh, there's something more to them. But yeah, like the multiple recommendations, I might tell my colleague like, hey, will you recommend me? Like, sure. But then you bring that list to somebody, you know, if they're on there 4 or 5 times, you feel a little more confident.
Yeah, for sure.
Because not everyone is built to be a professional developer. I think you can get there, but a lot of our teachers haven't had that opportunity in a lot of your content areas because we haven't offered a lot of professional learning and done like ELA, math, and science consistently. And so trying to get at building others up so that we can build lots of others through them is ultimately the goal. Is as we build more people, they're building other people. So we have greater capacity locally. Group next, Jody, and then Jamie.
So we did talk about the organizations that we already kind of have partnerships with that have
Like
that do
disseminating
things.
it that way? Okay.
But then we had a really great idea. I was giving credit to it, but you turned your head, so never mind. We had a really great idea.
Robert. That's Robert.
But using Teacher of the Year, and then we expanded that to other recognition from other organizations, like Beverly Taylor Sorensen does them, SHAPE does them, but teachers or other professionals in the field that have been recognized for excellence in their area.
Yeah, like the math teacher that came in 3rd. Never used him from Davis, but I really liked him. I think he could do a good job in that opportunity.
Who was it?
Helen Davis in
Oh,
Davis.
there you go.
Used to work in Salt Lake, but he changed his name to Davis.
Davis and Davis. I talked to someone like, well, he's very confident. I'm like, oh, that came across. Anything else before I move?
No, I mean, we've talked about, when you're talking about other organizations, we included universities in that. We included, because, a lot of universities have programs that are really awesome and they're usually free, or other community things, they have things that align to your standards, and it's free that's been developed by them. And that would be a really great thing to get out to when you're doing these, to have those groups come. And a very specific example is in a University of Utah has a nutrition thing that they go in, they teach the nutrition standards through this free curriculum. That would be something that's really great too. Oh, anyway.
Yep, awesome. Oh, we've got to consider our partner organizations, what they can do for us. Like the regional service centers are willing to help with recruitment as well, so that we can send it to Duke and all of Scott and all of them to say, hey, help us get the word out to teachers, because the district is usually a blockade to getting it to the teacher.
We just talked a lot about too, you could have people that are recommended. Those people may not be interested. So make sure that you also have them that they're interested. But the other thing that we talked about is making sure that we would let them know what the benefits for them would. Some of the benefits for you to come and do this leadership role could include. Then it's more enticing to get people to apply, right?
Well,
And
they
then
get a sash.
They get a big sash, it's great.
So, too far? Yeah, we won't be buying swag. I'm gonna say we're not gonna buy water bottles, we're not gonna give sashes, whatever we buy is gonna be functional for improving student learning. And although hydration is important, I think at this point, looking around the room, not in a dearth of water bottles. Plus, we still have some from the last school academy. They are blue, and there's hundreds of them in this room in here. If you ever
Yeah, I
need
think
one.
there's, I think we got several cases back there still.
We do. This side, I think we just.
I was just hoping for a USPE shirt.
We do need I wanted to get a TNL logo shirt.
Oh,
so
shirt.
If you have,
You know.
we may do that someday. We don't have to wear them on a certain day of the week, but when you're out and you can represent, so.
No tease collar.
No, so we also just talked about, instead of going out to the classrooms, maybe having them submit a 10 to 15 video. Have them actually teaching in their content area.
Excellent. And we might want, you might want to give them the vignette that you might want, show me this, or how you do whatever your area might be focusing on to see if they can. Well, doesn't always mean they're going to be a good facilitator of professional learning, but at least they can teach. All right, this group.
So,
anything to add?
Because after I was interviewed by Travis,
it's very intense.
I always am.
No, actually, it was really good because it had me thinking, because I'm in this mindset of thinking about what are the things where we're doing to recruit teachers to attend. And so coming back to thinking about recruiting successful facilitators, one of the things I thought about that I think is so important all the time is like, what are the things that we're always doing to build capacity? And you were talking about that and hitting on that, because I think that when we're constantly thinking about how are we building the capacity of our leaders, who then turn around and build the capacity of their team, that there becomes a stronger network. And then with that, you then, like in my mind, I think about then what are the goals of the professional learning that you're having? So like, for example, this past year, we did a big old thing with the multi-tiered system of support. So then I was thinking, so who are my people who are really strong in that area? And then I also, so then thinking about what are the different diversity of the members that you have in your community, and then thinking about how do you diversify, like making sure there's a specialist on the team, and that there's a teacher on the team, and that you have someone from higher ed on the team, that you're, like in my mind, I think it's not just about like who's good, but how are you building the network? Because hopefully that leader that's in higher ed is also going to bring in more higher ed conversation. And then we do applications, but I think our bigger conversation that I really appreciated the team pushing me on was like, how do you get the applications? Because we also have applications that have those conversations. I like the idea of the video, but how do you get the applications out to like every teacher and every person that is out there? Because it's like we have listservs that are directly to teachers who sign up, but if they're not signed up in the listserv, and we also have listservs that are to the district reps, so your specialists, and then we ask them to send it out to every teacher, but encouraging them and going beyond that, I think is something. I love the regional center, whoever brought that up, because I realize that I don't send it to our regional center leaders and ask them to also send it out, and I think that's a really good idea.
One thing that something you said made it click in my mind, so thank you, is like with the videos, we talked about videos, and our wonder would be, would we get thousands of videos? And then, like, I know you and I have had this issue where sound quality is terrible, and you're like, well, I mean, it looks okay from back here, but I have no idea what's happening, what's being said. And then you have to have like the signatures of the kids that are in the video and all the waiver stuff. So I'm gonna say this not to circumvent the LEAs, because I do want their feedback first and foremost. But we could, looking at the recommendations that they provide us, we could look at that, if it is a teacher, that teacher's data in math or in whatever. And if it's, 30% proficiency, like, maybe not this teacher. So that would be another way to really, look at, well, they're really changing outcomes for kids. They must be doing some great things. So it's another recruitment strategy.
My goal is to bring the synopsis of this to the curriculum directors and see what they can get behind. They're ultimately going to have to disseminate this, and not just to themselves. And that's the part that's got to get a broader appeal.
Do you have a vision for how many of these people per content area we want to hire for this?
So Kristen's pulling the data on how many teachers are in your content area. Working on that, and then once we have that, that'll help us determine how many you're actually making. Part of that's also dependent on what you want to be able to do. Like, I might say, here's your max, and you're like, we want to start a little smaller this year as we build and grow. There's no need to go full out the first year, right? We're going to have some hoops to figure out. We're going to have some stumbling points. Like, the first year's never going to be as good as year one. So it might be wise of us to start a little smaller, build demand. Yes, we won't be able to meet demand, and then hopefully over time increase our load. I think it's a lot for us to kind of do this first year, and so thinking, yes, we'll be at every location, but maybe we're just going to offer 1 or 2 sessions of that in every location. But there's multiple opportunities, but you may only hit. I think for me, you need to mathematically know how many teachers you have out there, so you can think about what is the grain size you want to try and go. And that will be specialist specific around that, and then we'll look at the money to see what we can actually afford to do. How many teachers you want to impact, and I'm thinking we start with like a goal of 30% of the target number that you have, and then we see what that looks like in your space. Knowing we just don't know what we're going to get this first year. They got pretty good in the Academy getting quite a few teachers, but it took a few years to build up. Just awareness, that kind of thing. But there's such desire from the districts, I'm afraid it's going to scale a lot faster than we maybe can. All right, I will try and produce something that articulates these ideas. Bring to the curriculum director. Okay, next up, 9:55. So I'm going to take up till about 11:15. So you have an hour and 20 minutes to work with your team. If you finish that work early, you don't have to stick around. You may move away. But I wanted to give enough dedicated work time today for you to actually have time to get some products started or done or whatever. And so we'll take until about an hour. I only need about 5 minutes with the people with standards. Actually pretty fast. I don't think it, what'd you say? The rubric when you had to do world language or dual immersion. What was world language? And Robert, how long did it take you?
Yeah, it's always longer than what Sarah does. So.
Good to know. I will give you about 10 minutes with me, and then if it takes you longer than that, you'll have you'll get it done.
The reality is, the part of it is kind of a judgment call. I mean, it's a real, like, you've got to kind of just follow your gut. It's not.
It's your judgment call. But
Right.
I think what the nice thing is your judgment calls really clearly showed this rubric is working. So social studies was up, and it was the lowest score. ELA was the second lowest score. World language was done only a few years ago. It was a high score, and it really helped the board feel confident in the rubric. So, like, health and or which one would you most? Health should be a really high score, hopefully. Or PE might be less than a high score, but still probably in a brokering of not ready for a standards revision. Driver's ed, mathematics, the arts. Just trying to think who needs to do it preschool. Your ELA was in the ELA, so you're safe, Melissa. If you think I missed you, let me know. But I need one from each of you because I have to submit the results to the board for their further consideration if they want to queue anyone earlier than what it is. So I'm going to take the practice points that we did, not make you redo them. Nothing has changed significantly. But I do need all the other content areas that haven't done them yet. So before you leave today, if I just said your content area, stick around. So let's take until 11 o'clock to work with your team. Those that have a core content, you can exit 10 minutes before that and come join me, and we'll give you the rubric and explain what you need to do. And then, okay, so go ahead and get in your core implementation teams. If you don't remember those, they're in the Google Drive, so you can figure out where you're supposed to go. I'll go grab the papers that you wrote down what you were going to work on to kind of cue you up faster while you move, and then we'll give you some time to actually work today. Back. That's not all I remember. Yeah, I think it's the first one that we're in.
Should we move to what is the core implementation meetings?
Oh, yeah, because we were the
Is it the standards revision? Yeah. So the tables that we sat at and we wrote the little poster? Okay.
This one good, Jamie? I'll bring my mouse.
That's what I'm.
So maybe the standards revision templates?
It was closest to like.
language and dual language.
This statement?
Yeah.
I'm a little unclear as to what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
So which one are you looking at?
I'm like you, Jody. I know that it's I'm just bringing my chair.
Shall we get into a group?
I need to bring back a napkin because I was dribbling my coffee.
How dare I waste time? I know, right?
So we move to a round table and see what.
I'll be right back though.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. What group I was in. I was in whatever group talked about finding.
It took me a second, and I was like, oh yeah, the G. I remember.
Not today, had two people show up.
I just
District show up. So I'm doing the data really quick. I don't remember what. Not a problem. I'm almost done. I need to talk to you about the You and your computer issues.
Yes, because.
What group?
I mean, I've definitely want to be.
But you look at it,
Well, you can
I mean,
speed
do we sit in the comfy chairs?
Obviously, we should sit.
They haven't heard of frequency.
It doesn't say anything, it doesn't say anything. That's not what we were asked to do. We were asked to give her the information, so we'll give her the information.
This is regarding standards.
Send it to me.
Let's be here. This is great.
Is this Robert's group?
Nope.
Teachers.
Lisa.
Review standards.
Is this Robert's group?
All right, so what's the topic of your group?
Whatever you want it to be, right?
You're just like, you are
So,
welcome.
and also what we're doing.
I didn't want to just like shoot you
I
away.
just have basics.
Thoughts when I started.
Here's the real
I'm in this
question,
group.
though.
Thank you.
Am I on this group?
I can't remember. In fact, you're in charge of this group.
I am? Remember you wrote the
Yes,
chart.
I started
Well, that, no,
Are
that's.
these the groups we're talking about?
That is way
Go
different.
on that little thing?
The quartiles?
Quartiles.
I will be back.
Right, what does that mean I have to do? Ride the bus?
That would be excellent. But then how are you gonna get to the capital?
Who's number 9? 4.
I'll ride share on Uber.
Us, friend.
That one's fine. 8.
Where's my handwriting?
Oh, yeah. I remember these.
5?
5. That's my handwriting now.
To make it come back faster?
So 8, yeah.
This group? Or did you guys have conversations? What's the main document?
Steps 5. I missed those comments. That's awesome.
It's a little folder.
Number 1. Well, then this is not where we are.
The resources.
We can do 9 as well.
Yeah, she, right there.
I am
They've
coming.
already developed their steps.
I think it may have been
We're supposed to.
me.
Where do we put that?
So it's
not me
like,
that
so if
wrote
you're in
that.
the staff meetings drive, there's for the
That was not my
standards.
key, but we can do it.
See what you get through and they've got time.
Well, that's like it could be your handwriting.
But that might have been you. That looks hard. Let's go look. Figure out where we go.
But that looks vaguely familiar.
Okay, and I think it was, it might have just been 2 you worked on this.
That staff meeting. And standard revision template, I think that's it, right? Well, that's the template. Yeah, that's not it.
I know, right?
What?
She don't want to tell you. Or did you figure it out?
Oh, I see. So the standard review.
Okay, nice.
Step 1 and step 2. That's okay.
So I don't know what.
Oh, okay, so we need to develop the agenda.
They need to make documents for these 4
Kind of
things.
find out. I don't
No, it's
understand.
in the actual thing.
I didn't find it.
So there is, yeah, so in that step 8, there is a 90-day.
How about I create some folders for each of these and then we can throw each resource in there?
I'm sorry, I lost track. Could you please rephrase that?
Did someone say Google? That video of the old grandma. Hey, Google. Have you seen that one? She's like an Italian grandma, and I say, "Hey Google," and she like with her accent, it's always "Hey Google," and she like can't get it to work, and it drives her
We have our
nuts.
names on it. Yeah, I found that one too, but that doesn't have our names.
Oh,
This step 5 is just all of the examples.
Which time? On Facebook.
It's just in Google.
Did you ever watch
Let's look in
the
September.
Wonky Donkey that I sent you?
That's what this means.
Right, but that doesn't have our names.
Oh. When I look at hers, it doesn't have our names.
I've got these for the sample.
Tamara, would you like to join us?
Is it any, just join any group?
It's join, I think it's, if
What
you
you were
signed
last
up.
time with the steps, like step 1, step 2, do you remember?
There's the folder.
Oh, this is number 8.
I think, I don't remember.
I got you.
What was the survey template?
Oh, so community and public review. You have to have some sort of.
I've got some then teaching. Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna force.
Yeah.
And you weren't here. I didn't see.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. I can't survey monkey anymore because we only get one.
Well, he was no longer with us when we started this. We haven't worked on this very long. So we have a
I didn't use
12
it.
step revision.
Sorry. So you have to have a survey and I have the document. Summarize.
That's a document you could see.
But I have to download an Excel sheet. That will tell you.
I just realized, so what I want to do,
So in there,
I was trying to
I
find pick our
there's
business.
a lot of. Am I dropping that in the discussion? Am I dropping it in the number 8 folder?
So yeah, are you making
Yeah, just for each of these. And we'll throw those documents in there.
I just need to open it.
Are the board memos, are they updates?
Find a group. Find a friend.
So in that folder, there's an ELA, social work on these, science.
Staff meeting, staff revision templates.
Yeah.
Can you still see them? Can you access them?
There it is.
the thing we were gonna talk about last time was, one, it has to be 70 people correct. So we do need to have material.
I only put one thing.
Yeah.
So that's
Oh.
literally.
Maybe I had more than one then.
It's just Ricky's and Jolie.
Yeah, it's the summary, right?
You're right, it was tricky.
Kind of where that would be.
Jane, the
Yeah,
first
she's
folder.
right there.
Can I connect with you for a second to make sure, because I wanna
Drive the conversation.
I'm like, I'm ready.
Hey,
What up,
here.
Joey?
And then where it has things in here.
Okay.
Can you tell me what these are and how it relates to
So
step
should
5?
I like not these right now? Because there was 1,000
Absolutely, I know that.
you guys want. So should I
We just want your
take
signature.
off
You know what I'm
It's
trying to
just-
say?
Yeah, I mean, is that what the question is?
Yeah, so each.
Summarize the standard.
We just want a list of your, what your basic survey was.
Yeah, yeah, we don't.
What's step 1 and 2, I think?
Okay, so you don't move it, probably so.
So,
Standards revisions. Writing committees meet to review common standards. Like, there's a lot. It may be in number 6, but writing committees is step 5.
Okay.
It's literally this document that you can go right now and say, the standards review committee are completed according to this code, the rest of the first paragraph.
Okay.
So we agreed upon, and then we'll go right into it.
I just and turned it like that into like a word.
So you think that you needed to.
Yeah, because that's where all the questions are.
Because that was each question. And so then,
Because I start my process with the old
okay.
right?
I just
so like here is the record of what the recommendations are.
No, and it's all,
members.
I just wanna make sure we're on the page.
Yeah, because honor
And I won't, you'll come in and move them to the step that you think it belongs in. Fantastic. Okay.
So it's just a negative Google.
I'm wondering if
What
one, the group wants
their
to review these
recommendations
things
are.
now,
And
or
share.
want to document.
No, we're not. We're just talking about step 5.
She's ELA. I'm just using the math example.
Oh,
It's the one that makes sense.
What is the
Standard revision.
Do you want me to slide, so I'm in step 5.
I just put it in there, staff
Document
meeting.
that is supposed to be used
It's there now.
is,
Start with the document.
the science looks exactly the same as that one, and the health looks exactly the same as that one.
What about
This is what we're trying to decide.
Jamie's going in and moving them because the documents are on step 5.
Okay.
I guess there was
It's more of a
Okay.
Oh, I think
Of steps.
pretty.
call it a process. It's really more.
Remind me
of an
what
agenda.
this
Where in the staff?
8 is, like, is
I'm
there?
just in the general, like, just review on staff meeting and then in the
Okay.
document.
I'm sorry, but I had to plug in.
I've got another.
You're good.
Put your stuff in.
I saw that, and I saw the folders.
Won't hurt my feelings delivery of public meetings and staff will hold ongoing meetings. Right. Besides, you wouldn't want to have to try to translate my notes.
Oh, great, yeah.
Like a review copy, and I was like, wait, which?
Oh, yeah, there.
It's in the standard revision templates folder.
Where did they
all
leave the
this,
comments? Would
added
that
it
all
to
was
staff.
a survey, which is online, right?
And the staff meeting folders there.
Sorry, repeat all that, because
Okay.
I was reading and.
So you're fine.
Right?
These are the ways
Is that
that
what
you're
you're
looking
really
at.
like what?
Well,
Yeah,
is there
when I got
just-
down here, I asked someone to send it.
Oh, good.
Because you have a template, right?
It really is the template, so really in some ways, I think what would be nice is if instead of it, like what we could do.
So instead of copying and reading the template and then take out
That's
the
what I was gonna
content.
say.
What do you
That's what we legit.
What's it called?
Last time we talked about doing a flowchart.
Well, actually, I had more than 6. I had 6 public ones,
There's a
then I
folder
had an
called
access, a
Statutory
curriculum director, a
And
charter
then
director, and a
front.
PTA.
Right.
I had 10.
So you're in that standards document.
So
Yep, I think you're in there
people
with
would
me.
get
Oh, there it is, template.
said that
So
they had 3 minutes,
so
but
then
we
instead of
never actually
anywhere
had to
between
like,
secondary
and you're done.
mathematics, we can
Actually, we
have
had to do it
content
once.
area.
Or do we highlight it to be like, that's something you need to change?
We did it one time, be like, it's not your turn.
Notice I already started this where it's saying this is where recommendations,
Yeah.
the recommendations at their level.
Yeah,
And then
We
I
only did that
like
one
the
time in
below or
all of
secondary
the
math
meetings.
examples because I want people to know the high level of the
Maybe
other.
not.
And then I think the same thing would be good to have health
So this looks
and
like
science
in the
in
90
there
days
too,
you
so
have
people
two
can see a couple of
sorts of
different,
agendas.
but they
So we have
can
like one
use.
that's like you show up to meeting, this is the
Yeah,
agenda
so
you
if we
get.
highlight the
And
things
then
that
this
need
is
to
the-
change,
Well, the other one's like the board back at.
where people put their own.
Or that, should that be here?
Writes the standards.
Felt like this little light yellow.
Committee that just reviews.
Basically. So how did, were you just writing down
What do you
your
think?
feedback?
Okay,
or
so
were you-
depending, so we have, yeah, okay, so, and those meetings were 2 hours. Those meetings were 2 hours.
Visually, what color do you think would be lovely to be pleasing to
I mean,
the
it
mind
They have to
and
be
be
twice.
good?
So you'll see that there are two meeting agendas for science and 2 meeting
So
agendas for
actually, the
health.
recording.
Is that the better plan? Okay.
What?
Because.
So
But also,
comment.
this is
So
what it sounded
I
like.
think based on the agendas, we can probably.
Where do you see better frames?
What?
if we were
Huh?
recording,
Yeah.
What's,
So let me get
should
out
be
of
the
that.
After you get through your
This is
craving
what you heard.
for a cupcake.
Because she's recording.
That's what,
Actually,
yeah.
I don't
That's
know,
what the
because
recording
everything, the rest
sounded
of the
like.
first paragraph should describe the process the committee used.
Was she
Did the
recording
dates
on
coming-
Usually-
I already feel like this is a template.
Yeah,
Like, I
I
actually am
agree.
hesitant, and maybe we should say content area,
So,
because
we
really
learned to
almost
move
the
it away a
whole,
little,
I already
but
changed
then
it
it
so that
still
almost the
became
whole
a
thing.
Because one of
So
our
this
members
recommendation though,
wanted
so this
them
is the
public.
document
We
that
would
we
probably
would
have
want to
questions to
submit.
guide the conversation.
So work memo from.
So don't record the meetings.
Don't record the meeting.
So
And
Crystal's
then
doing
this
Yes,
is
you're
what.
gonna, I
So
would
she
give
took that,
you
yep, for
guiding
each of them, and then she
Right.
gave them to, and so what- how she would do it
Generated
is she'd be
before the
like,
This is not the memo,
maybe
this
it's
is the
sent
board
out.
backup.
she would just number, right? Person 1, person 2,
So
person
what I'm
3.
thinking that what we're
alignment
All the way
saying is
down,
that
like
next step five,
we're hundreds of numbers long.
graduate.
it would be
That's
nice
how
for
many
you to
people,
do
and
one.
some of it was the same person too, but
It is called
we didn't go
Goes out
back, we didn't go
before.
back and track that that person was number 1, 5,
Back.
10,
up
I think that.
and then 20
And
through
template.
100.
Assume
We
that
didn't
people
track that.
and template for what?
so-
Template for
Meeting and that will.
standards,
So.
review,
So did her feedback
recommendations.
just look like person 1, yada, 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 or
Either
did she
decide.
divide it up?
Would that be
Her-
helpful if I put that in?
Materials out.
Like one of her,
How's that?
Okay,
so
I think this.
will you make a new?
And then-
If you had the meeting and then
Okay,
say,
in the
well, I
agenda.
know you didn't really look
Yeah,
at
I
it,
think
some
that's
did
what's
and some
gonna be
didn't.
helpful.
And you're
Yeah.
gonna
So I
assume
think
that
what would
we're
be
gonna
helpful.
Agenda for
And
spend time
I'll
looking
put
at it
a
anyway.
backup
Then
in
why
there.
just send it out?
And then we
I have the
actually
agenda there,
want,
so that
It's
Yeah,
like
it's like-
assigning reading, you're then not accountable for, and so then kids quit reading in their class because they're not accountable.
It's like 90 days before.
I don't think so. You can't.
Peer review.
I think especially for meeting one.
So Jamie, I wanna delete, I don't wanna delete yours, do you want me to, do you wanna move them from step 5?
Or they're all copied.
Well, the remaining timeline was what,
Or do you want me to
5
move
years?
mine to step 6?
I think they'd be
Sure.
more likely
Okay.
to do it.
All of them?
5-year schedule?
That would be
No,
my
I think the
schedule.
homework would have to be generative, though.
Is there like?
I have access as feedback.
Like specific, I think we can put a note in to say,
Access committee.
during the meeting,
After
it's
7 years, it's automatic, it happens.
an agenda item
Out of step 5 and
for
in
their tasks, but
But what I'm saying is, didn't the board decide 7 years automatically?
getting really clear about what's the charge, what are they charging?
now there's just a folder.
So they understand,
Have to have a 7
here's the, here are the questions.
Was the survey a way for them to write
So the survey is for everyone who doesn't come, and so the survey had the questions, so they give their demographic.
I want to rename folder step 5.
Well, so then just take everything out of the folder. It only says like demographic, but it doesn't tell you what demographic was, because they could say that their parent, their teacher, and then they also say what city they live in, that was part of it, and that the Excel sheet
And it's
doesn't give you all
almost-
those choices. And that's more
Which almost feels like we shouldn't
I wonder if
highlight
we
anything.
access.
Because now, as we're looking at it, the more I look at it,
So
the more I'm
in the
like,
survey monkey again, you can
that
see
template?
what all of the choices were, because the choices were much more important than what that little, the headline just says demographic, but then you didn't know what all my choices were.
Just
Because
tell us what
university
you
professor
think.
was a choice on there as part of the demographic drop downs. And you had to fill out the demographic, that was required. But then their next part of it was.
But I do think we have to
Like if you have a
then
specific thing,
say,
so then you had to tell me what
so
standard
here-
it was,
here's some
that
of
you
the
had a
guiding
specific thing about, and then you would say what your specific
Do
feedback
these
was for that standard.
standards
So maybe
align
they
to-
didn't like, okay, trusted adult accountability type, that's an easy one to talk about. So the specific feedback then would be trusted adults. They wanted parents included, right, so that would be a specific feedback. So there's a place for general feedback. In general feedback, you had up to a maximum of 1,000 characters to give general feedback.
Other questions like
Then there was also a
I'm like,
choice
I
of
think
groups,
that everything that's highlighted is actually
standards,
highlighted.
and that was a choice.
So just from, a lot of those are right in
Basically, so after the demographic section, which was the longest section,
For some reason,
there was
I'm
only
in there as.
really 3 choices. You could approve it as it is, leave specific feedback about a specific standard, or general feedback.
Your answers in your Excel sheet, you would go down a couple columns and see what they've selected, kind of gathered. Can't get it surveyed.
See, that's, no, these ones were just approved changes. Well, but that's what you have to, that's there any of the ones that then this down, this one says replace, these are the demographic ones, so there are other, we met on Tuesday, so this one says
So
members.
you have one meeting, then you have to have a second meeting.
Doing right now, the content area, and then
Oh,
they're gonna like,
I thought there's a nurse out there, there's a
psychologist there,
So
so there's not like a provider or that you're automatically.
Okay, so all those were off.
The process wouldn't be similar
Oh,
for
yeah.
every contract.
So then
This
what
one was a
yeah,
checkbox.
So I'm gonna say
that
this.
rubric
So
are.
I
So
think
it was
it's
triggered.
So the parent or other or teacher or administrator, that was a drop down.
Yeah.
This one was a type, just short answer type. And then this one, it was a general feedback, specific feedback, or approved changes. That was the 3 choices there.
But that's
Then
the
if they had
rubric.
specific
That's
feedback
already
about
been
created,
created.
if they had, here's the general
I
feedback, that one got quite long.
about this as they were going through that.
So even if we can't get it surveyed,
So this is not so that it
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Other
This
than
is-
maybe
this
some
is sitting right
no matter
there.
what
Yeah.
team you're on.
So we can put that in our folder?
Yeah.
I think we get to figure out what step 5, know what do I have to do?
Excel
Being
layers,
like, what
be
do I
like,
have time?
yep, we get to
It
do
would be
this.
nice
Sometimes
to, like,
it's
have
not
that.
But truth be told,
Clarity.
actually, what you really need that is maybe timeline.
It's like a million
In
things
the
there.
end,
It's during
No.
step 4 meetings that you're reading. Like, I literally created this.
So we can grab one of those 400
As our
extension cords.
second standard review meeting where with the
Okay,
team.
I put that in.
Here's the
Minutes.
Oh,
and I put information.
So,
just because like
Here's
there's
we're not,
the rubric is on
we
all have them in one with other power
I
bars.
also talked about effective
They're one of the check.
No, that's really unsafe.
Right?
A huge fire hazard.
recommendations for the committee, not specific.
That's
So I think it's
links to those. Yeah, and they're on our website, so if you wanna drop
that's
your
not
links into where they're on the website or the website will be the state.
They said we can be distributed on page 12.
pretty sure.
Yes, thank you. Should have been a Girl Scout. And thanks to you, I have a comment.
I'm having Crystal send me that.
Right?
So I
Should have been
think
posted.
that idea
It's
is something that would
You're
come
over
out
your
like
shoulder.
the big overview document that says,
So he would know how
in
to
step
get.
4, you need to start creating your step 5.
I'm saying we're plugged in today. We're doing a flip power bar solution.
I'm gonna imagine there had to be like,
Yep.
right? Should
Yep,
be
and I
like
think
that.
there's
That's a
step
step
4,
4.
so I may go through.
Roberto.
Whatever.
No, or, oh, and view only on this untitled document. I was gonna add, under the survey questions.
So that's actually step 5, which is why I think a lot of us are on both.
Oh, right.
Step
Yeah.
5 is staff
Then
will summarize the
It
status.
says here's what we're gonna do or present, and then this is why we need to do that. Because we met,
That's, I think we're on
decided,
board.
I think now we're gonna read.
Present
to.
Here, that's where they're telling.
So when it says backup, it's not like your
I
backup
think I
plan,
said, yeah,
it's
sorry.
like the justification
That's
for.
to preschool students because they don't
Do
understand
we have a
what you're doing
specific template
They can
of
understand you.
alignment to
They
portrait
can't
of
figure it
graduate
out.
level?
And then my nephew was like, she can speak a different language. I was like, no, not my nephew. I kind of call my nephew.
They wanna read it, process
It's
it.
highly unlikely
beforehand.
that any standards review committee
Sure.
would not recommend.
Yeah, you do what you gotta do, Melissa.
Play catch up.
I
It's
just
also
support
not-
you, I'm only half a step ahead.
Possible.
Let's just be
But
clear.
half a step is.
And also serve the right team.
It has a little agenda.
Yes, yeah, and
So
so
like
the
it
agenda
just-
was really cool, so here's, I'm gonna give myself props on the agenda. Because there was a QR code on it, so people who felt like they didn't get enough voice, or maybe they were like super intimidated by
I know.
a particular person in there.
Oh.
And so they were super intimidated and
it's
they didn't
5
wanna actually
persons by
speak
one,
up. Or they got shot down on one, so then they're done.
Outside people.
Or they were just like, I'm really not sure what I'm gonna do,
7.
because there's a lot going on, I wanna think more, I'm gonna come back.
And then within
So
those
we have a
7,
QR
then
code on there that
some of
took
those
them
people
to that
can
survey.
serve on the right.
So in,
So that QR code document now is
Okay. I think
not
you
as a
can.
dingo, which is
Oh,
where you were.
because I was in my team.
Opportunity to
Yeah.
give what it is that they're so passionate about. I can
Sure.
public feedback and it's with a way to keep it separated. And it would be captured.
Again.
put stuff in that folder.
Tell me.
So I just have 2 different Google Chromes. One is signed in with my USB and one is signed in with
Yeah,
my
there
chip.
you
It'd
go.
be like,
One.
and so here.
Create a document and drop in
So
that.
yeah, and like I have different Google Chromes. Yeah, so I have 2 different icons, like, so like this one, the professional headshot is USB, and the one with tacos is my Gmail.
For tacos.
That's right, tacos.
One other
Tacos
thing.
are good. I love
Structural
tacos.
changes.
I think I'm gonna do the same thing.
Because then when I go to my Google Drive in my taco, it pulls
We
up
did have
my,
strands and
It
stuff.
automatically goes
it
there.
automatically goes to my Gmail Drive.
So
If I emailed
And I also, you'll notice that I changed the.
Because I'm always alternating between.
Yeah,
these.
I never have to
And you
do
never
that.
have to do that.
Never. And I also changed the colors.
It helps.
So that I know
Where
without
you
having
are.
to look at the icon, I'm like,
Okay,
oh,
so she
sure,
put
it's on
C1,
this.
C2,
I ain't got no
C3 comment or 1 comment or 2.
So, all right, I'm gonna go talk to step 4 group.
Special ed trait.
I do think, well, I love it.
Document. Okay, so here's what you're gonna do. So right here in
That almost
this.
should be like a checkbox.
The
The
standards. Okay, so when you're you got approved to start reading and that's great.
Is that it?
Okay, we're gonna open it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
That's when I did
I'll
mine,
move
October
that
and
up into
November.
step 1.
All goes well tomorrow.
Oh, I was in it.
What's tomorrow?
And we're talking
Board
about.
stuff, not.
Oh,
Kind of what we
never mind.
want.
Don't do that.
Some people may
Oh,
use
that's
that
not
as
what I
a
meant to do.
sign.
Undo.
Don't want to have grade.
Fine.
I almost wonder, and tell me what you guys think about this, if we make a template.
Okay, so now it has, I have 2 files in, right? The file you created and that one.
Is the template that is
Oh,
for
see
step
one.
5, and you were like, wow, our timing is amazing, because I just added
Oh,
the
yeah,
short
there you go.
template to create in step 4 for step 5, and put it into step 4's document. Because I was in step 5 and realized at the end as we were talking about it, I'm like, actually have made this. I've been in for health science and.
It's 2 enough.
In meeting 2.
Is
Like
that in
meeting
response to the
2
conversation or in
is
response to
after
your granola bar?
It's like the second hour. You're kind of like, okay, this seems to be where we have consensus.
These are so expensive, they can't
Is that what you're talking about? That ends up becoming the board backup, or?
Oh, yeah, I know, and if.
I feel about a lot of. You have a census document.
Yeah, you're right. I
or.
I can't like look at you. Like I don't have anything that you're gonna like trick.
People want to make sure that their outlier is our.
Yeah, I think that there's.
Math is dumb.
Math is not, Robert.
Like, yes, I ate it.
But if you look at the template that I just added, tell me what you think about, and then the other thing is I do think it would make.
Okay, so put your
5%
in there.
What I did is I took math and I turned it into.
You can change that later, yeah, just pick
math, I
something.
turned it into an actual template. So I'm like, the rest of this paragraph is where you put in about like when your committee's.
I should just create a board backup.
So like I have, my work one is Doc Height and my personal one's Malia.
And so does it, like, as you're asking that question down below, it says like.
Yeah, 'cause there's, like,
100%
standard-
consensus was made on these items.
Well, then never mind, because
And then beneath it, it says.
he's just submitted, Randy put in.
Do you have anything about Portrait of a Graduate in here?
Like general updates?
Alignment.
Okay.
Oh, but maybe not.
No, do you think that should be added?
Yeah, I mean, I've laid out this, like your charge is, and one of it is.
That was.
Prejudice the goals,
I
and how do
accidentally-
these standards help meet that?
Yeah,
So-
you know, I know that Ricky does not have that. I also wonder how much do we want to have? A Portrait of a Graduate is. That you can log into or to document other documents.
I kind of, well, for the board
Yeah,
memos and stuff, I wanna.
You're right, it might be.
Or a survey or what?
Refer to.
Yeah.
Refer to current board agenda, strategic plans, you know, whatever.
Yes. Yeah, let the.
Rather than just kind of keep it more general.
That's
but-
right. What is it called? What is it called? Did you say?
How?
You have to like put
To create and stuff.
flyers in places and.
You're
So how do I advertise
gonna-
for surveys or the, all the meetings? It went on my webpage.
By the way,
Mark,
you are talking about the things.
not even
For
a
Ricky and
Peterson.
Jody have
Maybe
both
just
put
like
on
that.
their agendas.
Yes,
and
he put it
PowerPoint.
out, and the social media thing, the newspaper ran it as well, like the Tribune did, the Desert News, and the Ogden Standard all ran it. And then before each, and I swear it's in the folder. Yes, I know I did, because there's a sample, there's a thing that says sample letter. Sample email, sample something. Sorry, I'm on this one.
Okay, so do I need to do?
Okay.
So you're
That
to get my
But
bookmarks.
anyway, so there's so that email went out to, I sent it to like my district contacts.
So now go to
For
add a
health
person.
or charter,
On the
and I
person
said,
who-
and it says like, we're having a meeting in your area, and so then they send it through their parent email list. So like Davis County, for example, uses a thing, and so does Tooele, a thing called Peach Jar. So when I went there, they sent us through Peach Jar that there's a public meeting
Yeah, that's great. I'm like,
at Davis School District on this day. And so then, but the charters all within the Davis boundaries got the exact same email to send to their parents to invite them.
Didn't I add, then I'm adding
what
two.
this is also what Diana.
Right, because you have a
So
Gmail.
it may not be.
But
In other
this
words,
didn't have
as we
anything to
went
do
through,
with
it was
it.
a Diana, like Diana.
No,
First one you would
so
do
this
is
person right here that you just made Tamara.
Yeah, this is my Gmail.
Right, so now we're gonna add somebody else and we're gonna associate that person. that we did not
Right.
add.
So if you go to the PowerPoint from Ricky's, he
So
kind
you,
My schools?
so you create, yeah.
of used
your
what he
schools
did
at
in
the top.
meeting one, and you can see that.
Why do I have David?
The distinguishing folder down
Yeah, I'm cleaning it up.
Cause you, it wasn't a person, it was just logged in.
Oh,
Do you see what I'm
okay.
saying?
I think I'm getting
Many
it.
people
So
who
you have
come
to
in who
have
don't really,
people.
even board members don't.
And then
Okay.
you can, then everything's synced and then you just log in to whichever
Lots
one you
of
want.
lessons out there.
To be fair, I did email you like that once a week. Yep, I'll just go now sign it.
Your question was really about the difference between standards.
Policy 300.
So I think,
Because
so I don't know what you wrote.
It's so much more useful.
I don't know what you guys wrote, but it might be worthwhile to look at Ricky's.
How many different meme one agendas?
It just should be Jody's and Ricky's and either one of them. Yeah, because they're not.
Standard revision trigger. Doesn't say copy all.
That's a,
Grammar
I think that
The
is
same
why
as your login to your computer.
Oh, okay.
this is what they came
No,
up
mine
with as
just
far
has
as,
changes.
he's just sharing with you, not from 10:45 to 11:50. Actual flow of the agenda was.
Change
one has red text.
Process timeline.
It's not the same.
Yeah, let's just get rid of that draft one.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
This must be the sneeze corner because
I'm just like, woof, that's my first day, I was like.
Sarah, the PowerPoint that we're keeping. Second meeting.
Okay, so it's
So funny looking at the, the J's on the top.
Well, has slides.
The draft one, that's the actual one. So
Reference from the first meeting.
Top of this folder.
It talks about what's the objective of the Standards Review Committee? Statute.
Right click on
actually, that one is highlighted. So
Make sure that
it's right.
our standards are giving students an adequate financial college to
So
have.
now those, even if you close all your windows.
I was thinking gang up, right?
So that
Now,
it's part of the charge, you know.
Club,
what-
reading club.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice to have that.
Yeah.
Oh, they're on your desktop.
Are exclusive.
Barbara,
It'll
did you
take a
look through
minute.
that agenda? You'll notice
So that one will always
understand
have.
standards and curriculum.
Other
One
one will
is
always have
current
more
state of K-12 science. And then there's the process, so they actually talk about the 12-step process, so that they understand what their role is.
But I actually
wasn't
closed
in
it.
there.
And then, of course,
So we're just fixed access.
I think they're, I think I am revising. Is that right? Because they don't recognize that they're not the writing committee, that they're the recommendations committee of overarching big ideas, so getting it back.
I thought it was access for.
Here's where we are.
But there's
That's
so
what they call it, right?
Sounds like that, but it's spelled access. Yeah.
And I think.
So if you click on this up arrow, then it'll.
Oh, sweet.
So I took those survey questions, so I put them
And
in.
then it's the charge. Here is what your charge is as the standards review.
I can't connect.
And then
Doesn't mean no.
they had the, like,
Put the questions.
hour of, and then that posted is what came up. The
So
PDF that you're like, what is this
right now,
poster?
and then we'll drag down here.
We need it.
I don't remember.
Didn't even know, haven't even touched it.
So we're uploading the
So now
guidelines.
delete this.
Writing committee and
Did a link to this page for uploading.
So now it is right there, you also are here to.
what's your question on the guideline?
So
for
when you click
inclusion?
on the T,
Writing
you
committee
always
public
should be
feedback, what's your question?
That's the board policy.
Will always be
and
I see that
And
there's
then
a
I
social
actually have
legislative
another browser.
Yeah, this is like, that's just like.
So what I did is I copied.
Title.
Or it'll pop, sometimes,
Probably myself.
So
Like how often?
yeah, it'll
does it
pop
pop?
whatever is,
Then we
whatever
can-
is.
So in regards to how many public.
Mine did not be.
Thank you.
Until
A
we're
useful
towards the
skill.
end.
Now, if you wanted to.
You had a couple, you had a couple.
Care. So.
So you said it.
What?
Mine
Because
has
when
different,
Color?
I don't know what you're saying. What are we like?
Yeah.
Someone wrote.
I have, so that my blue is kind
See,
of.
it just saved
That's in their other, where you let them fill in.
Question for me is from
It's
the,
very simple.
either.
So which one's
So
which?
just open up the browser.
There's lots of really cute things in that. You're looking at the survey?
Processes that worked really well.
I'm just cleaning it up.
Oh, well, there's a lot of really cute.
Thinking about the meeting, is like the individual post-its and small groups.
If you have time for, with the 1,357.
Yeah, I can
What's the-
share. Being
My
in-
favorite one out of all of them, though.
I don't know why that looks like that for you.
I got the same comment a whole
Oh,
bunch.
wait.
I think I added them up and there's 67.
I think I made that in your big
Comment.
thing.
It's something really close to that, right? I actually did a sort and I found them all. And I think it was really close to that number.
That seems much
I have a
easier,
lot
so.
of.
But
Yeah,
I don't,
but
One of them though,
pretty far.
copied and pasted the email where it was generated.
-4-203 is the one.
It is, we're generated.
So instead of just emailing the comment or copying and pasting the comment that they were all instructed to submit,
She actually
this person emailed the whole
This one's
email
always structured a little bit more.
chain information of it. So it said that, like, this was what I said, and it has all of their contact information, and you know, at the top of the email, how it has all the.
Yeah,
So if you just I know, if you hit undo right
this
here,
conversation.
Hilarious.
undo it.
It also happened to be the same person, by the way, who started the whole thing about.
Or you can just right here in this tab where
But they've also now launched into my core guide is and
When they start.
graphic and.
So is that the whole
They don't
purpose
have
of
to
their these documents and they want
talk about.
Yeah, I still go
And it leads to organizations
all
that
of
are
your-
anti-religion.
Get into the work.
I thought there were 3 basic
That's
ways.
like in Jody.
Part of the reasons we have the guidelines for including the
One was like
Yes.
legislative
And I'm not looking at.
With your writing.
That's why we were going to.
Block
look at
it.
it. But I'm
Sure.
curious if
You
you
had a
had
couple
lot of
of
different
meetings under your belt so that you had something to go off of.
Yeah, I didn't do this until we were most of the way done.
Takes a lot, look at the standards.
Because there's no reason to have a meeting with all those factors.
It's because it's somebody else designed it.
Community partners too on the writing team.
Sure.
There's her.
When I'd only gone to
Sure.
one meeting.
I don't think Ricky.
It has enough feedback to make a change yet.
There's all the resources.
The survey didn't take off until the newspapers started
There's a 7-year review,
responding
so-
to things.
That might be too.
So we'd have a board meeting. In the board meeting, one of our other favorite board members who is no longer in our state would ask us
Based on some kind of.
fabulous
Wait, now you got
questions.
the idea.
And the news would capture those really fabulous questions and grave concerns. And that's a direct quote, by the way.
Process changed from
And
what Ricky's.
then the news would capture that and run an article and they'd say, if you wanna
It really
submit
is
your
a-
feedback, here's the survey link, and then I'd get this flood of.
Yes, but does he have all
Which
12
is where you
steps
get some of
biased?
those,
It's 11.
health education's a joke.
That was a.
Yeah, that's where those all come from, is because it's like
There's
their response to
slides.
Salt Lake Tribune's. Click the link on what you think about sex education. That's actually not what I'm asking. I want to know what you think of the standards, but thanks for playing.
Like to do is.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can-
So there's a lot of those answers in there that are direct answer to the Tribune's question. One of the headlines was, how much sex education should Utah students receive? And so then all my answers on the survey was how much they should
And
receive.
copying Ricky's meeting and present PowerPoint presentations and turning that into a template.
So, I didn't feel,
I mean, I think
back
it's
here,
just
I didn't feel like it was ever important
what
to
we're
have
trying to do here is save
those,
staff.
that whole writing committee come in.
Copy that.
Stuff, you have to get room.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big deal to get them all back.
Slides and then. we
So,
can
but what I
go
did
over
do is I sent them an email.
And I'll put the word.
So I would
template.
send them, our next, they knew the schedule of where those public meetings were taking place so that they could attend as well. It was very, very helpful to have them in the room. Because a lot of the questions are like, well, why did you choose that? Choose any of it. I'm a facilitator, I'm not a, you know?
Yeah.
I'd have wordsmithed it, but I didn't choose any of it. I didn't do it. So it was really helpful then to have, especially the community. Someone from Huntsman Cancer Institute, for example, having them there when they're like, why don't you talk about breast exams? That's actually really
So I kind
appropriate.
of like.
And not accurate when we're teaching a middle school student. Like that's.
Doesn't apply yet.
Yeah, and it's not recommended.
Has the date and everything.
Huntsman Cancer Institute does not recommend that
When
at all.
we do that.
So that's why, and so it was really helpful for them to be like, well, actually. So it was really helpful for them that actually.
You know, I
came up,
mean,
so
we
that was
just
like
put
really
like-
specific.
I change it to say enter
But
date.
it was really great to have them stand up and go, well, that's not really true.
And then
We had a
what's
dentist
the
in one of them come, and he gave this whole thing about why it's so important to talk about. And that was really powerful
find
in
it,
that particular one, that shut down people who are like.
For, 'cause in this case, it was facilitated by Ricky.
Sexual hedonism. My catchphrase.
Yeah, and I was too.
And then Dennis goes, well, actually.
It's kind of a thing.
Well, the question is,
10 years ago,
should
I wasn't screening for this, but I have to screen for this now. It's a really big deal. And he talks about, you know, sitting out of bed and, you know, throat cancers and all these things.
any
And so
recommendations based on that?
right to have
I think what was nice.
totally outside perspective. Like, you wouldn't associate a dentist with those standards.
There were a couple of places
That's
where
why there is a connection. But that wouldn't, that's not like.
It's not the connection you would think.
It's not, this just like.
And there was one where I did, to not make it so that like when
But
it
it
comes
put a
to,
little more validity
here's the
into
charge,
what was there.
here's
So
the
it was
process,
the
here's this,
people
it kind
that
of gives it
helped
more
convince
of this is not just science.
Powerful.
That this is how we do it in teaching.
So
And
they
so
were,
the parts that were
and
like,
I
this
never
is
went
how
to a
we do it
meeting
in
where
teaching.
nobody on the right committee was there. But every single meeting, there was at least
In this
one person from
particular
the right
meeting,
committee in
Diana's
attendance.
And then Ricky did all
So they were,
of
that was kind of their constant involvement. And then I would send them an email update. So after a meeting, I would say, here were the big things that were hit at this meeting. And then break it down. Here's the big ideas that happened at this meeting. So they'd get an email update. Then, towards the last 90 days,
So I think that facilitated.
probably in the last
But yeah, snow
20
comes
days of the
after.
90, we had our first meeting
Do we need that?
with everyone, where I gave them, here's the feedback so far, which they were emailed in advance because it's.
Did you prepare for this meeting?
And then with the email, it was, here's what we have so far. Start thinking about things that we might need to address. And so then that first meeting went through some of the really big things that came up a lot. And then going back through the standards and figuring out how to fix it. So the trustees know.
I mean, I do think that that would have been very.
Either for or against it.
Whenever
It
things
came
are
up in
getting
every single
tricky,
meeting.
it's like,
So that was
it's
obviously
nice to
something
not
that
have
needed
the
to be
content
addressed.
specialist be the person.
And then we met again right after it, and we tidied up our draft so I could submit it to the board. So I finished on January 31st.
That's why it was so important
I had
to.
February, we met 2 more times.
Is there-
So
is there review
we met
needed
once
and then
right
you
before
just
and then 2 more times right after.
There's a
Three
no.
boxes.
So then in
And then you can
March,
mark
I got to
those
go back to
boxes.
standards.
There's 3 ways to trigger it.
In April it
Or 2 hours long?
Just the title.
So
of
it was a
documents
really
that
short
you
window of.
Yes, 3 hours.
With each
You have
of
to
the
do,
3 reasons.
I mean, think about it, if you
So
have a
here's
good
the
draft
thing
going
that I
in
didn't
90
see,
days,
actually said to Jody,
your,
and I
your changes really are going to be minor, because they
Yeah.
are just these
All
little.
we
tweaks.
think of our audience though.
It's defining a word,
Then
it's,
2 2-hour meetings.
oh, well, that was a typo. Or someone says, this one doesn't make sense to me, do you mean this or this? Oh, well, let's rephrase that. Or, how come you never talked about,
Are gonna be involved, so do we need to kind of incorporate that with the first?
okay, let's add a,
She opened it and they were so.
let's add a something.
I don't think they're gonna have that background.
You said dental hygiene,
So they,
Box
they
up
ended
there
up
that
doing
said,
oral
is a
hygiene, this is
review
the whole mouth.
triggers question, and then it
And that was
just spread out right into the.
Yeah, pointed out to us that we
And
have
the
an
arrow
arrow
would take you.
so that was a control F. Everywhere it said dental hygiene, it's changed to oral hygiene.
So you don't think we could test it out on driver's ed, because if they can understand it, everybody can.
Handle your questions.
Our job though is to start creating
templates, yeah, so I was thinking, I wanna like write down a new.
And so being able to talk
But I
about
didn't
there's
know.
no budget.
I'm gonna go to this and create a word.
Often travel along.
Is this just step 1 of the whole process?
I think that's too.
Isn't it funny how strong it is when it's on a hard surface?
This is something else.
Feels like it's
Yeah.
I don't know, I put mine on a,
Well,
I always put it on my board,
I know,
something
right?
or on my mouse pad, so it.
Well, you know what,
Absorbs that.
That's several
Garrett
people.
had things
so
also scheduled during these meetings, so I came to like my.
Review needed, then it goes to 3 checks. I mean, there's ways of checking to see if one's needed. All 3.
And say yes and no on each one of those.
Any info.
Oh, you can go up
For
to.
example.
I think we're gonna have a couple of templates.
Well, sorry, the agenda. We can
Oh,
bring
it's
it
just handy.
Second.
It would automatically go on the
You can
second.
format, right? Although I'm gonna say
Yeah, I
this.
put it in the writing.
How much do we want?
7 years.
Do we want to do
It's
that?
due Wednesday.
I don't know if there's
This
a
day might have
template for
a,
this.
this would have a
I
document.
go to the 3rd choice, which is.
So I might even just have an agenda.
Can people?
Yes.
I'm
What
saying.
we should do is we should have at the end,
So it's
like a
weird,
Word
'cause that
doc,
one should
it's like step 1, and then it says, here are all the things that
I would go to
or one
format
of our
because slide is gonna do
template
that
law,
a good time.
C template law, and like for the writing committee, there won't be a template, it'll just be like, CCE, schedule their meetings intermittently, invite them to.
As a law change.
Oh, did you have an agenda? I think I've seen your name.
I saw one of your agendas.
Is it a law?
It's really boring. Review feedback,
Maybe we
revise
could
standards on
see,
feedback, move items
Law
to core guide as
require-
necessary, update terms and resources necessary. Really a
It's just
unhelpful.
a change of.
I
Yeah,
think we should make it blank.
so it's just the content, it's not. It is under.
You wanna do it? Do it, Erica.
Update very key.
Want that bar, I think it's still part of there, you're gonna wanna change. Titles.
Your guideline for writing studies also.
Well.
Type in there anyway, just kidding.
Yes, it just says go to step 2.
All of these documents.
Yeah, that's what it is.
When I was looking at the
Good.
agenda, it was talking about the from.
So
It's like, I mean, that's the, that was like,
I wanted to, but I didn't.
I had offices up there.
Isn't there a way to
Where do
set
you
like?
live? It really is.
Like that when you were repeating it, you said a-hole.
I was trying to. So it's not a
Clearly.
Emails everyone. Anyone with a link.
Just like tell us where you're from.
The coaches
And
had
sometimes
Work with a location where you can't be afraid of.
so that was kind of funny.
That's a thing. You are not allowed a luxury.
You know what I mean? 'Cause if someone asks you where home is, I see the
I
address.
should be more tactful than I am, but.
Oh wait, anyone who has a link.
I was just looking at this 90-day review.
They're not all parents though, right?
No, they're not all. Yeah, they actually are. They're supposed to be K-12 parents.
Sorry, but then.
Oh yeah, I'm just doing it just as.
Some of them.
Cover back.
The highlights
so they can be
changed. So on that
business.
that's
where I went to high school.
Students, public K-12.
Yeah, so I wrote
So
in
this one,
there's 17 people.
Correct.
That's why I'm example, it's not all. Standard K
it
and
says
one.
if out.
And then standard is
Children's
on.
school.
Jody, try now and see if you can do
Okay.
Because I applied for that job, but I didn't even get.
I'm good. Thanks.
It's like,
But I'm like eligible for one. I just didn't have.
I was moving out of state. Like that. It doesn't have.
I'll have.
You know what name tag tilt means in the next?
Part of the norms of. Utility. When, like, actually, that was one of the things so that you could call on people as they told.
Right, except that.
Add suggestions and comments.
Kind of feel split.
You feel a little split, but you have like.
I would think that would fall under
I have
policy
multiple
law.
teams that I'm on.
I was gonna say, you tilt
Other
it
one
down.
is
so
like
it's
half
Board
of me.
directive was something like,
Have you not
there's
ever
a standards
had
out of
that
date.
before? Never heard of it. When you had a group of like 30 people and you're having a
So there's a
conversation.
revision timeline, so
What did I do?
Revision timeline.
Very
No, because I was not. I was not.
Well, I did do something.
That's why I was like, why don't we like?
Yes,
I was not.
thank you.
I feel like more so. You didn't tilt it the right way, Robert. That's why we didn't call it.
So I did the agenda.
I don't know if that was Diane or if that was me even, because it's like it was what we had done with health.
I'm
Because
just
health
thinking,
got a little
like-
carried away.
Yeah, that's, I'm just thinking
thinking if you have like.
So,
I just kind of am going
there's
to.
a step in
It's
between
between.
here.
Robert, show her again. Thank you.
Just have this Google Doc open.
Yeah, it's a tent, so you go like this to like this.
All I changed was that, because it seemed fine, and then
It's pretty funny.
it goes to back up. And then I did this survey.
Okay, okay.
We're doing the rubric, right?
Oh, that's us.
No, that would be the.
Oh, sorry.
Might have to say
Oh, and then they just determine.
And then off the score, then the board gives the score.
That's all.
That's what yeah. Once you get into the P,
You're a low score on
it's just a different game. The I mean, you're always going to have the
or conduct.
like
Standard.
I was
that
aspect, but
Low score this way.
Here's the agenda. I was saying.
because I have a foot.
Unless there's a guy named Norm there, then we have a.
Oh, you know what, regardless, the score is
Like a
submitted.
special educator,
From they get to the center, because it looked fine.
and those people typically.
So,
The other one changed more.
who's able to edit this?
Erica so far has been very successful.
Not yet. So if I open it sites, then I can edit it.
I am finding that I'm navigating.
Yeah, don't
a lot
open
of,
it,
like,
go to, open the template one.
Will be a template.
like the Hamilton,
Well, we have one, I just haven't made it official.
it's like trying to get the Gen Ed people to see the special ed.
Oh, is it? Are you looking, if you're looking at my stuff, yes, my steps are different.
I just need both
Than
until
what
they
it
know
does
it.
now.
Okay, it goes to board anyway, all goes to the board, then they get to say, oh, well, it's a high score, so we don't.
Yeah, but we can edit that since it's a template.
Oh, okay.
See, I wonder if we should.
It's very silent.
Consistency is the hot button on this.
All the documents.
My content people that haven't filled out the rubric, if you wanna exit your group for a few minutes so I can explain. And the rest you can keep working for about 8 more minutes.
Their knowledge base. We're trying to get them to understand calculus.
What's a rubric?
Okay.
Thank you.
I did, I was like, I'll just tell you.
I don't think I've done this.
If you got an email from this morning with the rubric,
Do not.
And so, but that's the legal system in Gen Ed world.
Speaking of some
And so then the special ed world.
We can also
like,
If you want it, I'll move around.
it's like,
It goes to the board, then they get to all with high score.
right.
I don't know if the two people are never going to.
I actually wanted
A lot of
Standards to
yeah.
revise.
Look forward to getting.
That's right.
I shouldn't say that, maybe Jimmy will, I know I will, maybe Jimmy is gonna get it. I'll work on the survey.
Possibly, that's the issue. Or it's still.
perfect, that's what you want.
Thank you, to keep them from, and then before that, I was.
Okay, math and team one for K through 12.
I've done a lot of weird.
I think that's not moving on the top of the or if you wanted to make a decision. I don't really care, something else.
Yes, come hang out.
I'm coming.
So we have their legislative mandate.
Rub it in. So, your perspective.
The statute.
Can we provision?
Well, according to some.
Oh, wait.
Talk about.
I would prefer you don't.
Can we talk about slide 7 for a second? Because I don't think that.
I can do this.
All right, so you got an email with the rubric, and so basically what you'll go through and I'll
Rest
just
of
pull
our
it up.
standards, like in my source size standards, the standards of the minimum learning goals set for students.
Just go through and
Standards
color
are
code
the
what you score
instructions
at.
and
So you can
competency.
pick whatever
There's
color you
some
want.
specific
You're gonna, like, let's say I wanna fill in this
language.
box, make it blue. You make it blue, whatever one you're gonna pick, and then I'll score it.
That one's
Or you guys
saying
can score it at the bottom. Okay. Where, and so you'll just put in the total points. So you'll add up, like, I can show you. So you would go through and add up the points from each category, so like the purple section, and down here in the, well, you have it on yours, the yellow section. Just actually put the points in, and it'll calculate a score. And I need the whole sheet back, but I'm just gonna give the board the scores, and if they want everybody's. Yes. Yeah, that's it.
Right. Welcome to Utah Core Standards, the State Board of Education page.
But now we're talking about all
Described
the areas, so.
core standards for Utah Public Schools that
It's just gonna like add a
Highlight
color.
it, any color.
Any color, I just, so it's really
I mean, I
clear
think
which
that
one
those
I'm
two
scoring it as.
make sense
So
of that.
fill it in with a shade.
So that's actually a good
And then at the
frame.
bottom, fill in the total
Okay.
by adding up
Okay,
your
that's what I wanted to make sure, so I'm just like
On
going through,
academic
so
factors, I have it
and you
all
keep
in
your
zero, so if you look at
0
down,
points between.
Guys, it's just.
0 points.
Yeah, still zero.
So I would just highlight right there.
On the
Yep.
standards
Right.
for
Yep.
student.
Possible.
Thanks, that's all.
Perfect, yep, and then you'll add up your
So
points.
yes, it's either yes or no. And then it says our stakeholders
I
requesting
see.
a change.
Some people may see that
Yes.
as that's a no, but.
Specialists get to fill this out. You guys
Right.
get to
So
decide.
it's a yes, we say yes.
So line 13, where is our stakeholders?
My first time using this.
Oh, perfect, yes. You guys do, and then you guys
say
just,
like
knowing
a-
what you know, where you think you're at as a specialist perspective, is not what maybe your
Because they
anti-people would say. How I see it. Probably don't as much. Yeah, people are pretty appreciative of arts. It's not as controversial as.
I know it is, but I
right
want you
now.
to see what I'm selecting,
Yeah.
so you agree.
We don't get
But I don't know
It's
if
controversial,
it's
so anyways. but-
Because she emailed it to you.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Implementation. Confusion regarding the.
Right, it was like,
particulars.
do it from a holistic, like,
think it
don't
was,
don't
yeah.
make it too granular, cause yeah, you're like, well, science is gonna be out of date, and social studies would be.
So
but
say between
hopefully the
21
board
and
will say yes to
30%.
our future
Yeah.
plans. You guys will never.
And I could leave.
No, the standards.
Yeah. Right.
I was in the meetings.
They're burnt out.
Confusion
Or
regarding.
that'll be another
meaning
reason
of a
to say to the
particular
board,
standard.
you're having to write what most people would do, and have 8 committees for, I mean, one.
I would say some of the standards need clarification, but I would say that there is confusion.
Oh, okay, so.
Right.
I was on the
Like
right.
the question and
Majority
answer
or
is
just
together.
Okay.
You'll have to
No,
like
it's
decide
so
whether
it's
it's
confusion and it needs clarification.
Everything was 0 about that.
That we're reading ahead.
Right.
So it's gonna say the
any state board that you decide it was.
You come in, we're leaving in 5 minutes.
With him.
So I need it by the end of the week, but it should be a pretty quick process, I was hoping you guys could basically get it done now.
curriculum is
Yeah, perfect. That's what you're wanting. Yep, just color in whichever box you say, and at the bottom, you'll add up the points in this purple section and add it to the academic.
So if they have they just changed it to 7 years, it's 65. So it's a little bit, is there like a schedule? We have a schedule.
And then
Social studies.
7 years seems like a.
The board meeting.
Right here.
She is a bell to bell teacher.
That we are 8:30 to 11.
Yes.
So if you need to move anything, just go
all
ahead.
right, I think we're done, and I'm gonna include all
Well,
of
then,
them.
leave the whole thing. I'm only gonna send scores for now.
You didn't have that big a group? Guys, did I get
The difference between the standards and the curriculum
She's so involved with so many of our plans.
Like, we're not over here. So we're just, there's a definition.
I think that's why I took this route, because I forwarded that and said invite whoever you think needs to be
Instructional materials review, being around, like.
registered.
Darren?
Not as good as you.
So Alan said
Are we on staff?
but he.
I'm on staff.
Well.
It's like
But a vendor bill, usually the vendors go out and get people to sign up for it so they can. I've got another one, another bill that was $500,000
He would know exactly, yeah, he is.
everybody's done theirs.
This is gonna be.
Gotta make sure I'm
I hope Rachel said we'll open up the window again and see if anything else applies.
So I think I'm like, wait a minute, I'm all teachers are learning.
You just went through the checklist, that's like the whole point of the document that we have.
Yes, I knew that was the situation, but I just wanted to make sure.
May also refer to
Yeah, teaching learning, right to 11.
Aaliyah, hi.
Okay, so Jennifer, I took that and just said, specialist has just done that.
So here's a definition from the
The 10 minutes would be curriculum.
lessons and academic content taught in school.
Did you have a good weekend, Audra?
I did.
Sweet. At home, right? Or not home?
Did you have a question?
Back up in Idaho.
But it is, I have a standard that says students will explore long work.
After tomorrow, I got a lot more free time.
It's not okay that I got 9 minutes time it took me to walk from upstairs.
I know, I have it.
Excellent, I appreciate it.
That was like 45 seconds.
All different people.
I'll take it.
I think it's just more like the day-to-day decisions. We did something, I
Discussions you guys are having are this complex.
think if we did something like that.
Okay.
I have like 10 emails from him and I just don't want to read it.
Standard versus
Seriously. Come next door and tell me what you need instead of filling my inbox. Because I'm not going to read it.
Clarification, she'll let me know.
Which one? How do I decide? They all look exactly the same.
But it's not always the teacher that has that choice.
That's the
A lot of
GFL
the
track.
teachers are telling them what to teach and what's for
PRF for work-based learning and non-track. Here's a GFL PRF. Here's another GFL track. Here's an IAA. I'm like, stop already. I'm not going to read these. Whatever you need, come and tell me, and I will do it.
Sounds like you guys are making.
Yeah, well, we've made a lot of success.
Thank you.
Slamming my inbox is not going to get you assistance faster than coming next door and telling me what you want.
So Leah and Talia, did you see my email?
Yes. I saw it, but I haven't
I
answered.
think that was Alan.
First I read.
I'll take them upstairs.
Okay. Somebody did one. Yeah, you might be able to use
Oh,
it.
I might like it.
Thoughts about how you might
All right, I'm outta
want to
here.
engage staff a second time through the definition. I'm good with either.
I saw it. I've not processed
So, cut me off, but for the competency definition that we worked on, we took a look at all of the definitions all the teams had come up with and came up with one kind of final draft, and wanted to have the teams weigh in again. So one way is either directly through email, we can just email everybody and say, give Jennifer any feedback you have, or two, I can pull a couple people from your teams and then we can send it out. So if they want to weigh in before we kind of go a little more global. It's pretty good at this point, taking across everyone's. We did a Wordle to see what were the most common words in the definitions and kind of made sure those were represented. Interesting to see them just kind of pop out. There's a lot of commonality across them. But the part that a lot of them were missing was the connection to learning, having an impact on demonstrate to demonstrate, but the whole point is like learning changes, and so we added that a little more clearly, I think, than a lot of the definitions had, but.
Okay, we're ready?
Yep. I will take control as long as I can.
Opportunity.
Why people are in the room.
So just a little background. I think most of you have been involved in this work for the last year and a half. Jennifer, is that about when we started this?
I think so.
I think you kind of originated it around the reading plans
Yep.
and challenges you saw in the field with the way principals specifically, I think, were dealing with their plans. So we had this vision of identifying all the plans that are required on both LEAs and school levels. And the link that I provided you took you to a worksheet, base work that we had done. And we haven't met as a group for at least 6 months, probably. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, yep.
But
Session
a lot of
came and we dealt with session and got what we wanted from the school level. It's the LEA level that I think, and even school level might be more. But.
Yeah, it might be more. So we had identified, Jennifer pointed out, we had identified, let's start with the school level plans. They're less complicated in some ways than the LEA plans, although there are a lot of those as well. The legislative session, we tried to get some consolidation. The reading plan was done away with, right, in the TSSA bill.
Yep.
We were able to get Senator Milner and the people on that bill to get rid of the school improvement plan. Well, substitute school improvement plan for the student success plan.
Otherwise, we would have had both.
Yeah, we would have had double. So
It was a
those were small victories that we've had. And then this work hasn't, and the interest in this work hasn't gone. It's just the energy behind it. It's kind of dissipated. And I've agreed to take this back on. Concurrently to this work that we've been doing, the state auditors were assigned to audit, and I don't know exactly what their audit is labeled. Something to do with plans, though. Wayne.
Reporting, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's this morning.
Reporting, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was, yeah, all under the lens of like.
On LEAs, right? So they've come around and interviewed staff, probably in yours, and one of the first questions that I asked Wayne when he interviewed me was, well, how are you defining a report? Yeah, everybody asks that. This is because my answers to you depend on what that means. And I don't know, he didn't come back to me with a definition, but I did show him the work that we started, and he seemed to get really excited about it. Yeah, shared the spreadsheet with him, talked to him about the success we had with Senator Milner's bill. And then since then, he's talked to me more regularly. Brian.
He's a nice one.
Yes, so he really wanted to come to this meeting. He gave me the energy to get it back on the table. He gave me this big window, schedule at any time in this window. So we found a time when most of you could be available, and then he kind of, something else came up, and he bothered him a lot, but I wasn't willing to move it. So he's going to meet with me at the end of this week to go through what we're doing. So I think his intention is to put in his audit findings feedback from this group. Like he's wanting to know what's the low-hanging fruit, and then what are the benefits. I talked to him casually about some of the benefits of consolidating plans or reports. So that's the first agenda item today, is to talk about specifically at the school LEA level, what do we see as the benefits, which I think he'll take that and incorporate that into his audit report. And then also for the State Board of Education, what do we see are the benefits? Let's have an open discussion about that. School and LEA level benefits for consolidating plans and reporting.
It's a burden. If you're a charter school, you're putting in a lot of time writing plans. As one person who usually does all of them.
I think besides reducing burdens, it would help, and you've got it up here in the purpose, would be to help LEAs consolidate and target funding to improvement and not looking at everything in silos, which is what they tend to do because they have to do a plan for this or that or something else, and so then they tend to view the separate plans going different directions, not one plan going one.
So coordinating their efforts.
Yeah, coordinating funding, resources, time, personnel, fiscal.
To talk about that in terms of funding.
Yes, that's what we do. Been hammering Title 3 years. Do not plan for funds, you
culturally
It
ferocity.
is, yeah, it really is.
I think that's pretty comprehensive. USBE, benefits to us.
I think it would do enough time needed to review. Consolidated some way and maybe.
Collaboration too.
I think it would do
Because
that, too.
currently, everybody has their own plan, so I don't ever need to talk to you about what you're doing with the school, because you
Yeah,
work with the person who has your plan, I work with the person who has my plan.
Mhm.
I don't have any idea what's
Yeah,
on your
so
plan.
exactly. There's duplication of efforts,
Tons.
there's inefficiencies.
Also, like, our ability to like, if we had a better sense of, okay, here are this LEA's like long-term goals, and here are the resources they're using to target, you know, right now more of a black box in some of those conversations, and there's just like, oh, there's a bunch of money sitting out aren't leveraging, or like, you know, or that some of that's not going on. But so I think like if we had a state fight over some of these that were more comprehensive in nature, that we'd
Might even be able to be more fiscally responsible, providing resources and supports that are targeted towards their plans. I think we all try and produce things. If we knew, like, okay, we have 20 LEAs working on social emotional learning, well, that's where some of our dollars go to support them. Or because right now, I think we just hope we know what's going on and offer things based on the one report I get or the 20 you receive. So more intentionality in our work. Not saying we're not intentional now. We just could be more informed.
So I'm going to back up a little and try to restate what I've heard Tiffany say. So Tiffany is really about increasing transparency within the LEAs, out of the LEAs. And Jennifer, support better focus of USB resources to support similar plans. Okay. So let's just step off of Wayne's needs right now and back to our group's needs. Identifying the right people to be on this team. See, we'll talk about that later, but these sections, whether we need somebody from each of these sections, or maybe some sections we need more than one person. Data statistics, I see that. I'm leaving any. Yeah, I don't want them stopping any work that they're doing. So policy, Jeff came to our previous meetings.
Jill's never come. Jeff and Tiffany have been fine.
Something you want to continue to be. Learning.
I can represent for them, and then yeah, it'll help me to know like what all there is from a director standpoint. Being new.
Probably me. Be Wendy's only time, depending on the direction we go. I always she and I made a list of things to bring today, so we were prepared. But after today, she may not need to come on a regular basis. She has plenty of other work to do.
Becky, you'd still represent. You guys are pretty regulated at the federal level.
We do have a plan, but if we had a couple meetings about
I don't think they know it's
making
really
it
available
happening,
much.
but the couple that have tried it in years past, it was too complicated.
It
And
is.
I told the feds that last month I was in DC. I told Patrick Rooney and Ruth Ryder and Greg Core and Larry Wexler personally, said this is too complicated. LEAs, schools won't do it. And they just looked like, what? We created that to reduce burden. Like, it's more complicated.
Well, and we don't have a mechanism here in the grant system and stuff to facilitate it at this point in time. I think
They
it'd have to
seriously
be
looked at
like
me like
Georgia
I was
rolled it out
an
slowly with 4 LEAs, and the next year a few got the feds to write off on what they're doing. They have a special fund in their grant system for consolidating.
Federal funds.
Well, and they're consolidating some state funding in there as well. Spent a long time developing it, rolling it out really slowly.
What kind of plan, what kind of consolidation do they allow? Not across, not Title I and CTE, right? Just within the title programs?
Yeah, ESSA has more flexibility, and so they can consolidate quite a few things. Only certain things in special ed that they can.
If they're Title I.
Can consolidate Perkins funding and
Yeah,
Title.
and it's
I
only if
funding.
they're a school-wide Title I
And
school.
it has to be school-wide. CT anyway. It's hard.
Yeah, Title I's LEA, but then it goes.
So it makes it really difficult to put the two. Title I
Bunch of
school.
stuff that
No schools in our state have seen an advantage big enough to take on the hassle or the challenge of doing it. Had some try it within special ed, but they,
No, we've had some try it
oh,
within
title,
title.
but they've become frustrated with the process. Or backed up.
But we notify them every year, which is our requirement.
Ask about it are those that don't actually qualify for Perkins funding.
That's classic.
Well,
It's One Academy all over again.
You're looking into something.
Their effort to try to get
Apply?
Perkins.
Yeah.
That's what-
Here's what it's for.
This is what ESSA said. There are limits on what IDA Part B can, certain things that can be consolidated. Migrant has some conditions. Title VI Part A, which is Indian, Hawaiian, and Alaska Native funds. Title ID is neglected and delinquent. Funds that can't be consolidated are the School Facilities Infrastructure Improvement Act, Adult Ed Act, or Adult Indians, which is Title IX. IHE funds, lunch, Head Start. Anything else can be consolidated.
Other than that really long list.
Yeah, well, all the other title programs could be consolidated. And there's state and local funds that could be consolidated.
Funds are consolidated, then the associated plans to go along with those can all be consolidated as well. Reporting requirements, all of that. I wouldn't take that out, it just sounds complicated.
Well, it does, what it releases them from is, as long as, what Georgia did is they set up a consolidated fund, it's called Fund 150. So for LEAs that have schools consolidating, they put the funds into that Fund 150 on a percentage basis. Title I, they put this percentage, whatever funding they've got. And then as long as the LEAs and schools are doing things that meet the general provisions of those, it releases them from some of the, like they don't have to keep time and effort documentation, for example. As long as personnel are working on those various programs, doing activities that would be allowable, they don't have to keep all that time and effort documentation. That's one of the perks that they get.
That was Georgia that established.
Georgia has, yeah, they worked for 2 years with
Something like that in Utah.
the Department of Ed, and they worked with Massive Ed and some other law firm for 2 years to develop it, and the feds signed off on it. And they rolled it out with 4 LEAs, and then each year they've added a few LEAs, but now they even have like Atlanta Public Schools on it, which is a school system.
So I think from my communications with Wayne, we thought this was a good idea. I don't want to mention it unless you think.
So then the other thing they had to do is they had to train the state auditors, like from the state auditor's office, and local auditors that would go in and say, oh no, you're not, you're in violation of this or that, because you have to look at the whole thing different.
What about dates associated with, due dates associated with Fund 150, bring those into?
I'm not exactly sure how all of that works, but.
Do you think it?
They said it's benefiting the state as well as the LEAs. Very positive about it. We met with them in DC in July.
So I'm going to put it in my notes that I'm going to discuss with you.
Like I said, their grants management system too, they've got that thing set up.
Whatever, what was that software we viewed a long time ago?
Oh.
Spark.
That was the West Ed plan. The West Ed planning thing is called Spark.
Not robust enough to manage this.
Well, I don't know. I think grants right now doesn't have that functionality. Maybe have it programmed in. Cost.
Yeah, that's a key distinction, is that, and where we got kind of hung up on some of these conversations, because where does grants management start and stop? And build grants management out to the part, which is more on the planning side of things. Yeah, but I know, Christelle has used it for some of those functions.
Yeah, and the Title III program is
Spark
much
is not a funding.
less complicated program than Title I is. There's only a few LEAs that get. They can only use it for a few specific. Like Title I is really complicated because it has to go out to schools based on, ranking and ordering and all kinds of. Darren knows all this stuff. It's complicated.
Okay. Sidetrack just with some questions, or let's go back to SPED. Would that be you then? Somebody else from that section?
Probably me until we figure out.
And that'd be true for SAS, or would you have somebody? I don't know if we still use SAS. That term. Yeah. Finance, do we think anybody from finance needs to
Back on the UJAC grants that Becky's. I don't know when they need to come on. Or when it will
Also-
impact Utah grants.
Yeah, I also think. Different comeback in through the.
Questions, I think we keep Paula. That's one, as an LEA or at the school level, that's still one of your primary.
I guess it's the question, are we gonna go back and visit more of the school level, or are we gonna focus LEA?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think for my immediate needs that I have with Wayne this week is just identifying, not differentiating them that way, but just saying, here's ones that overall that we think are low hanging fruit. And then IT, I didn't have anybody. So if we purchase software, it involves the IT governance structure, but I don't feel
There'll
like
be
a waste
a
of time.
template that might be need to be like built. Or a software system.
Okay. Right.
About LEAs.
Good question.
I just think, I mean, it's great for us to think internally, but I don't deal with it at the LEA level. You have, so you have that experience, but I haven't struggled to be like, oh yeah, that would make my life easier or harder.
Yeah, so it's always good to get people who are impacted by these things involved. The challenge for us is it's such a broad, like who we bring from the LEAs.
Asking like Terry Shoemaker and saying, can you recommend?
Superintendent level.
I think so. Well, who does their, maybe assistant superintendents. Whoever, it's usually with the assistant superintendent.
I think it depends.
Yeah.
Well, and it depends on the report or the plan as well. Very different across LEAs.
So maybe you just get a traditional LEA. Somebody from their district admin be sized, and then a charter, somebody from a charter school.
From an application standpoint.
Okay, before I move on to the next one on my agenda, Talia, you mentioned that you brought some information.
I'm so prepared.
Rather than me going right to where we're going to identify the specific plans to target, I want to make sure I give you a chance to talk about what you brought.
Well, it'll depend on what it is.
Right.
So ours are from school level here to LEA level.
On both of these. So pretty much everything we have then is LEA level. The MRAG, but it still funnels up through the LEA for final.
Yeah, they don't award,
submission.
they don't, it's not.
So I'll give you our list. I have it electronically too. If you want to.
These are plans. So
Plans,
if I add it
reports.
to our Google sheet.
Yeah.
I could have gone in. I can do that
Did we
for you
not
if you
have
want.
you guys involved
Yeah,
before?
Perkins, no.
Have somebody from your section, okay.
We really focus on the school level plans that around literacy goals, and then it kind of got a little broader, but it really came down to school improvement kind of thing.
And if you want school level on our list, it would be for agriculture.
Perkins we already had, then your CCA.
That is an
Messed up not having.
Full of reports. No, that's actually an old one. I just got our carry forward. It's obligated. We just can't get the LEAs to ask for the money back. Not back,
the
but
problem has been the grant system.
we get it into
Why
the
don't
system.
I remember that one?
So that's computer science. It's 2017, I want to say, 16 or 17.
Okay.
17.
Outdoor rec.
That's a new one. That'll be application based.
Well, they'll get money to buy it, won't they?
We'll pay for it.
Then
But
I
it's still-
then I misspoke on my.
So they don't get money to pay for it. They get
Resources.
items. Once.
HB 227, we're doing school
Computer science
applications. School, LEA level applications.
Perkins, there's been a change. We do have secondary applicants applying together. So they're doing a consolidated outside of the secondary system. Applying for the funds as a group. So that will help them.
And that tends to be right now in a lot of the smaller districts, so it's less of a burden on them now. Potentially bigger ones,
Yeah.
maybe someday. Can dream. Sure.
So what I'll do is I'll probably find some time and sit down with you outside of this group and go down the list on the left and put in the codes for each of your grants. I might be able to get some of them, but. Okay.
So on your spreadsheet, I'm having trouble, it's having trouble moving. On my game, it's not. So,
because we're all in.
probably, so I can't see. Is the Special Education Program Improvement Plan, the PIP, is it in there?
Kim was on the committee. She brought up something.
No, that doesn't sound familiar. Not at Orwith.
That needs to be added then.
LEA or a school?
LEA.
So do you want what the date?
Sure, that brings up a question. Would you like Kim to be? Okay.
I'll trade if it.
Okay.
Jenny Slade's actually in charge of the program improvement.
Great. Let's move. So that transitions us nicely into our next agenda item, and that is to identify which plans we think are low-hanging. So I view it in two ways. There's low-hanging fruit and there's big levers. So there's some of these plans, they might be low-hanging fruit, but they really don't bring about change. Some of these are big deals. They consume a lot of time from staff and they carry big chunks of money with them. I actually think those are the ones that we should focus on. Got a small win last year by just being at the table. I think the audit will help us continue to have that, be able to get to the table whenever legislators got it. Outcomes of the audit just to give reason of why we should be talking. What would you guys see as the levers? Again, without differentiating between district or school.
I mean, like Title 4A and digital teaching and learning. That raises a question in my mind about
differently about it, right? So it's saying, here's the goals we want to achieve, and here's the funding we're going to use to achieve those goals.
Okay with that?
I guess on our
As long
end.
as it meets, I think what we have to do in the plans is make sure it meets whatever the state and federal requirements are, but then the money is like, okay, you have this dollar amount. And obviously, the federal regulations with supplanting and all of that, we'd have to be cautious about.
We'd have to concede some of our have to federal requirements for easily. We have to align our will with what, at least to some degree, right, whatever the federal requirement or program.
Which would not be popular.
We have to talk about it in a subtle way.
Yes. But, well, and then I just don't know what the Title 4A reporting looks like. Like, you have to, like, you'd get the combined plan and then us on up, would you pull them? Do you know what I mean? Because they're like, it's all this stuff. I don't know about this.
You have to say, okay, question number 4. Look at question 4 and the whatever we meant is the part for you. Because that's what I'm thinking across all of the plans we have is like literacy of the literacy goal, but then you also have literacy goals in DTL and you have literacy goals in Title 4. Like how do you help them write one goal that they're trying to achieve and then the funding that they're going to use to achieve that goal? It's going to be super complicated. That's really what they should be thinking, right? Like that's ultimately the goal is we want to achieve this, and we're going to use all these different money sources to help us achieve that. The way we currently do it is they write 3 different goals for 3 different plans, and they try and enact all of them, and they all don't.
And then like you do focus groups with teachers that are in schools and improvement, and they'll say,
which goal?
Which plan are you talking about? I don't see anything as being the same thing or connected. It's all separate.
On the example you have, Tiffany, you'll see both of those, digital teaching and Title IV require state, or have a state goal requirement.
A lot of these programs too, they also require some kind of a need. Title 4A does, DTL does, Title I does. There could be some sort of a, Arizona has done a really nice job of having a consolidated needs assessment. Brought people together from across the agency. So everybody had input about, you know, certain things that need to be part of that.
Jolie's definitely encouraged that over the last year or 2 as well. One needs assessment, and then use that to drive all of your plans.
That's a burden too, I think, when Ellie said, well, you have to do a needs assessment for literacy. You have to do one for.
They do it.
You have to do one for Title I. You have to do one for this.
Yeah. So I think an easy, not an easy, but a consolidation around a specific plan to target consolidation would be a singular needs assessment that encompasses all, I think.
And maybe provide them a template.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think at some point, do we get like an auto-generated, like, if there are questions we can answer with state data, why are we making you pull the data? Like, getting a system that actually gives them, like, here's what your data is, now interpret it with me on them.
I think at the school level, the trust lines plan is, at least at the time I was there, that was the biggest lever for me. It's what I spent the most time on. So statutory requirements for your committee makeup, your publication period. So my school improvement plan at the time was either the same as my trust lands plan, or it was something I didn't intend to. So it just was trust lands plan. I think that was common across the
I think that's what
state.
Paula kind of lends towards, like they just kind of assumed it as, because what? Right, the one, and then it would allow for that to be different.
We didn't win. This is an area we didn't win last year, trying to bring those two closer together, the TSSA. I think the way the TSSA sits now, they're one of your plan goals from the student success has to be aligned to the trust lens plan. Something like that. So it tries to connect, yeah, there's
Okay.
some language that connects it to one or more of your goals.
With the encouragement of it.
In terms of developing the plan for the TSSA, it said should consult or shall consult with, and one member of the community council, I think, is listed, a member of the community council, or the community council is listed on there.
Definitely make that more robust when we go to redo TSSA.
Yeah, and there's people looking at that already.
Right? Learn something from you.
You get unhappy, people get unhappy because schools implement, it's loose, so they implement it how they think, and then it doesn't line up with the policymaker.
Right.
Well, the law says nothing about your intent.
Yeah, and if it's not written down, your intent doesn't mean.
Yeah, but they
Go.
trained to my intent.
Put your intent in the law. Thank you.
That's what I was trying to push for.
So do we think low-hanging fruit would be, and maybe big levers, because now these are your two largest funding sources at the school level, is to continue to bring.
I think so. If you're really going to have people focus and target their energies, why did we have them write two different plans? That money should just TSSA and we call it good.
Just one's the school
You
community
don't even need
council.
both plans. You just need to include the community council in the planning. Money is all together as one source. That would be the easiest. But Paula may totally disagree with me.
Does the funding have to?
Currently, yes.
Consolidating the plans.
People in charge of it's used.
But
Principal.
I'm just thinking of it can be used for. So you could get multiple groups to sign off on a plan together. Restrictions on what you can.
I'd say it's more restrictive than, say.
Douglas and change it. It's the most critical academic need.
Because they've stayed tight on that. Dates, if they could at least align the dates.
The dates are problematic.
Funding restrictions, reporting requirements, that would be, at the school level, that would be a big deal. I haven't heard feedback on what the TSSA school success plans look like. I don't see you to see the frameworks.
Yep.
And they're all over the map, but
Well, because of the timing, I don't think they were done in the way that they'd be done in future years. I think a lot of the LEAs just said, here's how we're going to do it. Level of decision rather than school-based decision-making.
those two I had you send me the other day, that was when we were sitting in it. Got called out a little bit. I don't know if called out's the right word.
They went district level.
But there you saw how different those two are.
Uh-huh.
Alpine's made some assertions that weren't correct. About what was state law. Really supported more the district or the school level.
Alpine, I got emails from principals like, I agree with what Alpine was doing. I was like, can't stop them. No one's. Someday, somebody will.
can.
It's just not me.
Their district's on the radar already, so.
Right. Yeah, they probably did the most interesting not following policy.
But it doesn't mean what they did isn't, I mean, they were in the media it's promoting all this mental health stuff. I mean, it's being
No,
promoted.
what they're
as-
doing is not negative. It's just not the way that bill was. It was not the intent. And I think that was clear that that was not the intent, but they chose to do it.
So early literacy plan, did we get?
But see, that's where the needs assessment, like we had a common one, would feed. That requires a needs assessment as well.
I think there's certain elements that have to be included. That's what happens as well.
So I have a question.
There have been conversations with superintendent points around, so okay, we have our agency strategic plan. But the real, there's a lot of value in having that and having it guide our work internally. But then, you know, they were in the classroom, so like how can this be used as a lever to align efforts across the entire state? So I remember at one point a conversation of, wouldn't it be awesome to have a mechanism where, you know, require LEAs to have, you know, a comprehensive strategic plan that, you know, covers, essentially has the same goals that we've outlined, covers their strategies for getting at early learning, saving up. And so, a lot of these, like, you can see where they could align to. Just asking like a big picture question and a kind of crazy question is like, how far would we? I think it's like a more of a like there's this far we can go with the state or with the legislative auditor, but like what's our long-term vision, and have an interest in going that far at some point. Conversations with the superintendent, yes, but how many unintended consequences? It's just a lens that I'm kind of looking at this through and wondering, like, would there be some sort of huge consolidated application that includes like those 4 goals and then all the funding streams that are used to get at those 4 goals? I know.
My only concern on it is, the biggest concern, I guess, would be how long are we keeping this plan? Because our plan hasn't historically lasted very long. So like this one, it probably has the most gusto of lasting that out of the ones I've been through in my 5 years here. But that, like, if we keep changing and moving the target, like we'd have to guarantee that we keep our plan for a dedicated number of years. Otherwise, they're just going to be like,
but then that
jumping.
And the problem with that is the problem we found in the UCA, where the plan was just cut and pasted from year to year to year. There was no new data. There was no update of whether it made a difference or not. So yeah. So when we say, hey, we're not going to change this, an unfortunate consequence is, oh, good, we can cut and paste. You're not change, so you aren't keeping track of the fact that we're not going to redo this or look at it again or think about it anymore or add new data or compare last year to this year. And some of them were great about every single year. Okay, this is our data, this is our new data, and the majority cut and pasted.
Yep. Sarah found that.
They're updated theirs every year and sent us a link to we'd go in there and say, wait a minute, this says 2008.
Yeah, data's from 2008.
And it came, at least in our department, it came down that staff wasn't really reviewing it. They would just approve, and so LEAs just learned, like, no one's looking at it. Why am I putting time into it?
Title I think we're the only ones looking at it. Looked at their plan and their needs assessment, and I don't think anyone else in the agency
that it was the same plan and the data's from 2008. They got irritated and say, well, we're still working on the same thing.
Data should at least be updated. You can continue on with your lack of efficiency at achieving your goals.
We got to a point where we had them identify which sections stayed the same and which.
I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how much of it is like have a strategic plan. You all have to have a strategic plan that has the same goals and then align all your funding to it. Like that might be a bridge too far.
Or do you
in
ask
terms
them
of
to do
local
like
control.
2 of our 4, or like early learning? There should like have to have one already, and it's really would be a useful space for I think each LEA could attach to a couple of them, but to force them into like, these are the 4, but allowing to say, here's what the state's trying to achieve, which ones are you gonna be able to support at your local level, knowing ultimately we can't achieve any of our goals unless the local level does something. To give some flexibility, but also some coherence across the state. Like, okay, those that want to focus on personalized learning, now we have 42 districts that's going to be the area that they're focusing on, that we know might be our leaders in the space or the ones that we need to be more supportive of.
Does that contradict the need to have a needs assessment?
No, I think it could complement, right? So you're using the needs assessment to decide which of the 4 goals, I was going to say pillars, which of the 4 goals align to achieving your needs, right? I try and think like, how could I make that work? Other people may not see that.
Yeah, well, and it is just sort of an interesting challenge or distinction to draw, where it depends on how you look at the goals. Like, are they strategic levers that we're choosing to focus on for a certain number of years, or are they actually at that goal level like almost necessary conditions for student success?
I think it's a title level. Yeah,
they almost pretty much are.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially effective educators. The only one where people might debate is personalized teaching and learning, but I say like it actually feels like more
we
of
had
a
that
vision.
conversation last week. At what point do we do personalized competency based? Like at the name, but that's.
But like the concept remains constant.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because if it's more of a condition, then it's like it makes sense to align.
I think
to
those
these.
individual goal or the strategies would not be as relevant at the local levels. Those make sense for us, but
those shouldn't be.
But picking early learning, personalized learning, safe and healthy schools, and effective educators and leaders, that shouldn't be a big leap for anyone.
So the funding stream,
Yeah.
streams aligned to. But anyway, it's just something we've been thinking. I think in terms of like to actually get to where policymakers want to get and where like a strategic performance management system from end to end, which I don't think they realize they want because they always talk about local control. But then they say, well, if I invest this amount, tell me exactly. And you're like, so you're putting it in the WPU, and I don't know what that goes for. So, in order to balance the local control aspect and the flexibility to have a robust planning process that aligns to something, anyway.
Give some flexibility where you don't say you have to do these 4, but if there's some flexibility in it somehow that allows them to use their needs assessment data to say, it makes the most sense if we hit, like our school climate survey says our kids are scared, then maybe safe and healthy schools like leads them to kind of prioritizing that or something. It's not my space, but.
Got 10 minutes left in our time. It sounds like we've talked about trust lands and TSSA, big lever.
Yeah,
at the school
I think it'd be a
level.
light lift for the change too.
Those are both of those are completely controlled. School safety on here, I think that was, when we met last was before the legislative session ended. Was there a school safety plan?
There was supposed to be, but that you can change it to the health because 373 passed instead of 120 plan. Made it as minimal as possible.
Is that at the school district plan?
That's at the LEA level.
But on federal ones, so those generally a lot of money comes to those. People jump through a lot of hoops for their federal money. We would want him to say in his audit. This would go back to this Georgia model that the states do have some ability to.
But how we actually go about opportunity to seek. A more coordinated effort.
There's some,
Or which you can't.
there are some very specific things. I don't know how we would do. months. But I think the needs assessment for us would help. I mean, if there's a needs assessment, as long as the required elements are there. In a school-wide, and for us, it's an applicant. So they don't apply by school.
Yeah, so I sent
LEA.
you a link to Arizona's.
So I think that they could do some needs assessments, as long as they have the required elements in it. There, then I wouldn't have any recommended consolidated effort for.
Arizona built their needs assessment around 6 principles, which could be something like templates in there for like friend data. They have to submit it every year as part of their.
How long have they been doing that? Consolidated needs assessment.
I think they rolled it out when ASA went in. And they keep revising. This one I pulled up says revised March 12th. But it has a needs assessment, root cause analysis. Like principle 1 for them is effective leadership. So effective teachers and institutions. 3 is effective organization of time. Effective curriculum. Climate culture. Family and community engagement.
Opportunity to have it, we'd have to group all of the different plans in some way that seems natural.
They said they brought in someone from external to facilitate meeting across agencies. So every different group came and said, we have to have this piece in.
I think to some level, that's ultimately where this could go, but what's the lightest lift that gets you some quick return? I mean, part of it might just be like a staff assessment of what data do we gather that is used in some actual purposeful way versus what's just gathered to meet compliance of state policy. Yeah, I mean, right now, I think there's probably stuff we gather that we would say not being used, so why keep gathering it? But when the bill was written 10, 12 years ago, it seemed purposeful at the time.
I think we have consensus. The needs assessment would be something. Now, keep in mind, any of these things he puts in the audit, we'll have to do.
This is the problem.
And the TSA School Land Trust, that'd be something somebody else. Might cause some side of that issue. Okay. All right. So we got our group that we're going to meet. And how regularly should this group, and I'll try to get some people from the field. Seems like quarterly is about enough for me. Does that feel right?
Sounds good. I guess when the audit comes out, we should meet. That's probably right.
Do we know when he's planning
Unless we want to get in advance, but
I don't know when this is going to get published.
it's got to be almost done, right? It's been working on it for a while.
November.
Yeah.
Wanted me to have this meeting before.
Yeah, I was thinking he was hoping for October.
So, I mean, it's not that we couldn't start working on the needs assessment even without an audit finding to tell us to do so. So we could meet sooner, but.
Example of one of those spreadsheets, something used internally in the audit. I didn't want to now audit that.
Right.
Yeah.
Look what you missed.
Yeah.
Here's all these other plans. That was not a comprehensive document by any means. It served the purpose at the time.
Yeah, I was clear with them. I was trying to help them see we have the same vision you do. Value in that.
Yeah.
But, okay. Right. So I will work to get membership finalized, and then also on the calendar out in advance.
Is there something we should do to start gathering information? Did a needs assessment, like I would need to know what each has some kind of plan or report, what kind of data they're requiring. Start gathering if it'd be useful.
So yeah, if we started collecting all of our required needs assessment, the element. Or as a group.
Document, or is it in a folder? Folder, we could just.
Document, I don't even know who started it.
We almost need like a template, like an Excel sheet template of name of the plan, specialist over it, what's required by statute or federal guidelines of related to a needs assessment, and then we'd probably have to help staff know what a needs assessment, what we mean.
There might be an updated version of this, because I thought Jeff went through and somewhere I'd seen
We did do a
legislation.
different one. I've got that one, I think.
Where does sheet 1? Requirement,
Yeah.
statutes. So board rule and statute, he's got those.
We tried to put them all in, but I think it'd be more specific to needs assessment, right? Because this was just like what is required in the plan. Because like DTL has a huge 52 requirements or whatever, but the needs assessment's only a few.
Okay.
Plan. It's ridiculous anyway, but that's another day.
Yeah,
They're going to try and do their own consolidation. They're like, okay, we're going to have 52 elements represented, but they can embed. So that's what they're doing this year, is trying to say, okay, 3, 7, and 9 are in this question. And answer 3, 7, and 9. Hopefully that works.
So we just developed our template.
Is everything in that required? Your needs assessment, it applies to as well.
Yes.
Down to 7th grade.
Grade now.
Why don't I do this? I'll take this list that shows where they're required, which plans have gathering those with the person who's responsible. Excel spreadsheet or something.
Document.
Okay. Okay, well,
Easy
thank you.
Yep, should be fun.
Well, if we could ever get all this done, it'd be really helpful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It'd be way more intentional with their work. And not in a way that they're faulting right now. We're just causing the faults.
But do you know
I
plan for your?
I was out on Friday, so I wanted, we had a meeting, a WebEx meeting with them that day with Nevada. And they've done some stuff in Nevada, and so I was reaching out, because we have loads, but I thought about having an independent group like them look at it and give us sort of a summary of what their review is. You know, sort of an
third party.
Right. Kind of looking at our secondary, post-secondary, they did some things with Nevada. It's a different gentleman than the one that we're. So I just need to reach out to them and say, I don't know contracting wise what they'd even charge, and I don't know if it fits within, like if we could amend the agreement that we already have in place that you guys have with them, because I know they consult with us on a number of different things. So I was just thinking that maybe timeline would go faster if I could amend or adjust a scope a little bit, tweak it, and put some funds towards that
Like at first I
cost.
was like, no, that sounds very different. And then I was like, well, maybe. And so I responded and looped in
Yeah.
Alex, but I don't know that.
There's a couple people that are specifically focused